The emergency room doors exploded inward at 2:47, and Emily Carter, the nurse everyone called worthless, was still on her knees scrubbing someone else's blood off the tiles when the first tactical operator hit the floor running. His boots missed her hand by inches. She didn't flinch. Behind him, 4 more soldiers carried a dying man whose chest wound painted the hallway red, and above them military helicopters hammered the sky so hard the fluorescent lights flickered. 10 minutes earlier, Doctor, Damian Cross had called her incompetent in front of the entire night shift. 10 minutes later, those same soldiers would be saluting her while Cross tried to explain why he'd nearly killed their commander. If you want to see how far a story about power, silence, and justice can travel, stay with me until the very end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see where this one goes. The blood was already dry by the time Emily Carter knelt to scrub it. Iron Ridge, Colorado sat deep in the mountains where winters came early and nights stretched long, and Redwood Regional Hospital wore its exhaustion like a second skin. The ER buzzed with the usual chaos: drunks, broken bones, chest pains that turned out to be gas. Emily worked the graveyard shift because nobody else wanted it, which suited her fine. Silence felt safer than conversation. She was 29, pale-skinned, with blonde hair pulled into a bun that never stayed tight, and blue eyes that seemed too tired for her age. Her scrubs hung loose. Her movements stayed small and careful. A faint tremor lived in her hands, the kind people noticed and made assumptions about. Nervous, fragile, unreliable. Dr. Damian Cross noticed everything. He stood near the nurse's station, 32 years old, and convinced the world owed him applause. Tall, sharp-featured, expensive watch glinting under the lights. He had the kind of confidence that looked like competence until you watched him work. He didn't just treat Emily like she was beneath him, he made sure everyone else did too. Carter. Emily looked up from the floor, still holding the wet towel. Yes, Dr. Cross? Why is Bay 3 still a mess? We had a patient in there an hour ago. I cleaned it right after discharge. This is from the MVA in Bay 1. Cross made a show of checking his watch. And it's taken you 15 minutes to clean one spill? Her hands tightened on the towel. The tremor got worse when people stared. I'm almost finished. Almost doesn't cut it in a trauma center. He turned to the other nurses clustered nearby. You see this? This is what happens when hospitals hire people who can't handle the pressure. Quiet laughter rippled through the group. Not loud enough to be cruel, just loud enough to sting. Emily kept scrubbing. Cross walked away, already bored with the humiliation. The other nurses drifted back to their screens. Nobody helped her finish. Nobody ever did. She dumped the towel in the biohazard bin and washed her hands 3 times, scrubbing until the skin turned red. The tremor didn't stop. It never did. She'd had it for 4 years now. Nerve damage from an IED blast outside Kandahar that threw her 15 feet and left her unconscious for 2 days. The Army called it a mild traumatic brain injury. The neurologist called it permanent. Emily called it a souvenir. She didn't talk about the war, didn't mention the patches she used to wear or the call sign that used to mean something. People looked at her now and saw a quiet nurse who couldn't hold a syringe steady. That was fine. She'd learned to let them think what they wanted. The thing about working nights in a hospital was that time moved differently. Hours compressed or stretched depending on how bad things got. Tonight felt long already, and it was barely past midnight. Emily moved through her tasks with mechanical efficiency, vitals checks, medication passes, the endless documentation that ate up half the shift. She kept her head down, stayed out of Cross's way. That was the strategy that kept her employed. Bay 4's monitor started beeping. Emily glanced over. The patient was a 47-year-old man admitted 2 hours earlier with chest pain. EKG looked clean. Troponin came back normal. Cross had signed off on a discharge, but something felt wrong. Emily walked over and checked the vitals. Heart rate climbing, blood pressure dropping, skin slightly mottled. She pulled the curtain back. The man was awake but sweating, his face gray. "How are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "Dizzy," he muttered. "Tired." Emily checked his oxygen saturation. 91%. Not terrible, but lower than it should be. She grabbed the chart and flipped through Cross's notes. He'd dismissed the symptoms as anxiety and cleared the patient for home. Emily's jaw tightened. She walked back to the nurse's station where Cross was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. 2 other nurses, Melissa and Jordan stood nearby, laughing at something on Jordan's screen. "Dr. Cross?" He didn't look up. "What?" "The patient in Bay 4, I think we should hold him." Now he looked up, annoyed. "I already cleared him." "His vitals are changing. Heart rate's up, pressure's down, O2 sats dropping. His EKG was normal, Carter. His labs were clean. He's anxious." Cross set his phone down like she was wasting his time. "You're a nurse, not a diagnostician. Stop second-guessing my decisions." Melissa smirked. "Maybe she just wants more overtime." Jordan snorted. Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. Cross leaned in, voice low enough that only she could hear. "You know what your problem is? You think you're smarter than you are. You're not a doctor. You're barely a competent nurse. So do your job and stop trying to do mine." He walked away. Emily stood there, hands shaking harder now. She glanced back at Bay 4. The patient's wife was sitting beside him, holding his hand. She wanted to push harder, wanted to demand a second look, but she'd learned what happened when she pushed, so she went back to work and tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. The shift dragged on. A laceration came in around 1 a.m., construction worker who'd sliced his hand open on sheet metal. Emily assisted while cross-stitched, making small talk with the patient while completely ignoring her presence. She handed him supplies. He took them without acknowledgement. It was like being a ghost. Afterward, she restocked the suture cart and checked the medication room. The hospital felt too quiet. That usually meant something bad was building. She was right. At 1:45, the man in Bay 4 coded. The monitor screamed. Emily ran. The man was seizing, eyes rolled back, foam at the corners of his mouth. His wife screamed. Emily hit the call button and grabbed the airway kit. "Code blue, Bay 4. The team swarmed in, nurses, techs, respiratory therapist. Cross appeared seconds later, pushing through the crowd. "What happened?" "Sudden seizure," Emily said, already bagging the patient. "He's been deteriorating for the past hour." Cross shot her a look that could have stripped paint. "You didn't think to tell me?" "I did tell you." "Not well enough, apparently." He took over, barking orders, running the code with the kind of loud authority that looked good but didn't always help. They got the seizure under control, stabilized the airway, pushed meds. The patient's rhythm came back, but he was unresponsive now, intubated, headed for the ICU. His wife sobbed in the hallway, being comforted by a social worker. Cross stripped off his gloves and turned to Emily. "You should have escalated." Emily stared at him. "I tried." "Not hard enough." He stepped closer, voice tight with anger. "If this man dies, that's on you. I want a full incident report on my desk by end of shift." The other nurses looked away. Nobody defended her. Nobody ever did. Emily said nothing. She knew how this worked. Cross would write it up as a nursing failure, chart his concerns, cover himself in documentation while she took the fall. She'd seen it before. She walked to the supply closet, closed the door, and leaned against the wall. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to press them flat against her thighs. 4 years ago, she'd run trauma calls in field hospitals under rocket fire. She'd intubated soldiers with collapsed lungs while mortars shook the earth. She'd worked for 72 hours straight during a mass casualty event and never lost her focus. She'd earned a combat medical badge and a Bronze Star, though she kept both in a box under her bed now, gathering dust. Now she couldn't even get a doctor to listen. She took a slow breath and pushed the memories down. The war was over. This was her life now. She opened the door and went back to work. The next hour passed in tense silence. Emily documented the code, checked on the other patients, avoided Cross. He disappeared into the break room to make phone calls, probably to administration, building his case against her. At 2:15, a teenager came in with an asthma attack. Emily got him on a nebulizer, started an IV, gave steroids. Cross barely glanced at the chart before signing off on the treatment plan she'd already initiated. "Good," he said dismissively. "At least you can handle the simple stuff." Emily bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to taste blood. At 2:30, the ER was almost empty. One patient sleeping off a migraine, another waiting for X-ray results. The intubated man from Bay 4 was upstairs in the ICU, stable but critical. Emily was restocking gloves when she heard it, a low, rhythmic thumping, distant at first, then louder. She looked up. The windows rattled. Then the sound hit like a fist, deep, mechanical, unmistakable. Helicopter rotors. Close. Too close. Emily's entire body went still. She knew that sound. The lights flickered. The thumping grew deafening. Outside, through the ER bay windows, she saw them. Two Blackhawks descending toward the helipad, rotors throwing snow and debris in every direction. The downwash rattled the ambulance bay doors. A security guard ran outside, shouting into his radio. The other nurses froze. "What the hell?" Melissa muttered. Cross came out of the break room, frowning. "Who called in a medevac?" Nobody answered. The helicopters touched down. The doors flew open. And then the soldiers came. They moved fast, tactical, weapons slung but ready. 4 operators in full kit, helmets, body armor, boots hammering the pavement. They carried a stretcher between them. The man on it wasn't moving. Blood soaked through the field dressings wrapped around his chest and abdomen. His face was pale, lips blue. Emily's breath caught. She knew trauma when she saw it. This wasn't a car accident. This was combat. The ER doors slammed open hard enough to crack the glass. The operators didn't wait for permission. They pushed straight through, one of them shouting into a radio clipped to his vest. "Redwood Regional, we are inbound with Priority 1 Surgical, GSW, to the chest and abdomen. Massive hemorrhage. Patient is crashing." Cross stepped forward, hands up, trying to look authoritative. "Wait, hold on. Who authorized this? This is a civilian hospital." The lead operator, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred jaw and dead calm eyes, looked at Cross like he was furniture. "Step aside, doctor." "This is my ER," Cross snapped. "You can't just burst in here without—" "He's dying! Move!" The team rolled the stretcher straight toward Trauma 1. Blood dripped onto the floor in a steady trail. The other nurses scrambled to help, grabbing IV kits, oxygen, monitors. Melissa fumbled with the crash cart. Jordan ran to get more blood from the bank. Emily stood near the wall, frozen. She recognized the patches on their uniforms. She recognized the way they moved. Efficient, controlled, no wasted motion. She knew exactly what kind of unit this was, and she knew what kind of patient they'd brought. Cross followed them into the trauma bay, still trying to regain control of the situation. "I need a briefing. What happened? Where did this happen? This is a civilian facility. We're not equipped for—" The lead operator cut him off. "We need a surgeon. Now." "I'm the trauma surgeon on call," Cross said, drawing himself up. "But I need details. Mechanism of injury, timeline, what interventions have been done. He has a tension pneumothorax and an arterial bleed somewhere in the abdomen. He needs a chest tube, aggressive resuscitation, and an OR, or he dies in the next 5 minutes. That's your briefing." Cross blinked, thrown by the directness. "I'll be the judge of that," then judge faster. The monitor started screaming. The patient was flatlining. "Assistole!" one of the nurses shouted. Cross grabbed the defibrillator paddles, his training kicking in. "Charging to 200, starting compressions," Melissa called out, positioning herself over the patient's chest. Emily's eyes locked on the patient. She couldn't see his face clearly through the crowd, but she could see his chest. And something was very wrong. Distended neck veins, tracheal deviation to the left, uneven chest rise, the right side barely moving. Her heart stopped. Cross was about to shock a patient with PEA, pulseless electrical activity. The heart had rhythm, but no mechanical function. Shocking wouldn't help. And with a tension pneumothorax, it could make things catastrophically worse. He was treating the wrong thing. Cross lifted the paddles. "Stop compressions. Clear." Emily moved before she thought. "Stop." The room went silent. Every head turned. Emily stood just inside the doorway, hands steady now, voice calm and cold. It was a voice she hadn't used in 4 years. A voice from a different life. "He has electrical activity. This isn't shockable." Cross stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "What did you just say?" "You're about to kill him." The lead operator's eyes snapped to her, really looked at her for the first time. Cross's face turned red. "Get out, now. This is a code situation." Emily didn't move. She looked at the monitor, then at the patient's chest, then back at Cross. "He has a tension pneumothorax. You shock him like this, you'll blow what's left of his cardiac output. He needs decompression, not electricity." "I said get out!" Cross's voice cracked with fury. The operator raised a hand. Wait. Cross turned on him. This is my ER, this is my patient, and I'm not going to let some nurse— I don't care if she's the cleaning lady, the operator said quietly. If she's right, do what she says. Cross's mouth opened and closed. She's a nurse. She doesn't have the training. Does she look wrong to you? Everyone looked at Emily. She stood perfectly still, eyes on the patient, reading the signs like she'd done it 1,000 times, which she had, just not here, not in this life. Cross hesitated, caught between his ego and the reality that a special operations team was staring him down. The monitor continued its useless electrical pattern. Emily took one step forward. I need a 14-gauge catheter. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, right side. Melissa, wide-eyed, handed it to her. Emily moved to the patient's side. The operator stepped back, giving her room. She positioned the needle, felt for the landmark, and drove it in without hesitation. A violent hiss of air escaped. The sound was unmistakable, trapped pressure, releasing. The patient's chest wall collapsed slightly on the right side. Then, beep, beep, beep. The monitor showed a rhythm, a real one, with a pulse. I've got a carotid pulse, Melissa said, fingers on the patient's neck. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Emily started calling orders like she'd done it 1,000 times before, her voice cutting through the noise with absolute authority. Chest tube kit, size 32 French. 2 units O-negative, run wide open. Get a type and cross for 6 more. Activate the massive transfusion protocol. I need a portable chest x-ray and someone to call the OR right now. Move. And shockingly, everyone obeyed. Melissa ran for the blood bank. Jordan grabbed the chest tube kit. The respiratory therapist adjusted the oxygen. Even Cross stood frozen, watching this nurse he'd spent months humiliating take command of his trauma bay. Emily worked quickly, inserting the chest tube with practiced efficiency. More blood drained out. The patient's color started improving, just slightly. Blood pressure's coming up, Jordan reported. 70/40. Keep it coming. He's going to need surgery. Abdomen's rigid. Probable liver or spleen lack. The lead operator stepped closer, eyes narrowed. He was watching her hands now, the way she moved, the way she thought. Then he looked at her left wrist. There was a scar there, thin and pale, mostly hidden under her scrub cuff. But when she reached for the suture kit, the fabric pulled back just enough. He saw it. A surgical scar from a shrapnel wound, the kind you got in very specific places doing very specific work. His expression changed completely. He leaned in, voice barely a whisper. Valkyrie. Emily's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. Then she kept working. But the operator saw the confirmation in that pause. Oh my God, he breathed. Cross finally found his voice. What the hell is going on here? Who is Valkyrie? The operator ignored him. He was staring at Emily like he'd seen a ghost. Behind them, more soldiers poured through the ER entrance. Not medical personnel. Command staff. A full colonel, insignia gleaming, flanked by 2 armed MPs. The colonel's eyes swept the trauma bay and locked onto the patient. Status, he barked. The lead operator didn't look away from Emily. Lieutenant Carter just saved his life, sir. The room went dead silent. Lieutenant. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Cross looked between Emily and the soldiers, confusion and anger warring on his face. Lieutenant? She's a nurse. She's a decorated combat medic, the operator said flatly. Army Special Operations, 6 years downrange. She saved more lives under fire than you'll see in your entire career. Cross's face went white. Melissa dropped the IV bag she was holding. Emily kept working, hands steady, eyes on her patient. But inside, everything was collapsing. The life she'd buried, the identity she'd left behind, the silence she'd built around herself like armor, all of it was shattering. The colonel stepped into the trauma bay, his presence commanding immediate attention. I need this man in surgery now, he said, and I need this room cleared of everyone except essential personnel. We're taking him up in 2 minutes, Emily said quietly, not looking up. He's stable enough to move. The colonel's eyes landed on her. Lieutenant Carter. His voice was formal, but not unkind. I didn't expect to find you here. Emily finally looked up. I didn't expect to be found, sir. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Cross was backing toward the door now, looking lost. The nurses were staring. The soldiers were watching Emily with something like reverence, and Emily just wanted to disappear. But the patient needed surgery. So she finished the procedure, secured the chest tube, made sure the lines were running, and helped transfer him onto the OR gurney. As they wheeled him out, the lead operator stepped beside her. "I was in Kandahar," he said quietly. "November 2020. Convoy hit an ambush. You pulled me out of a burning Humvee and kept me breathing for 40 minutes while we waited for extract." Emily looked at him, really looked. She remembered the smell of burning diesel, the screaming, the blood. "You made it," she said, "because of you." He saluted her. Emily stood there, covered in someone else's blood, trembling again but for completely different reasons. The ER doors closed behind the gurney, and Cross, standing in the wreckage of his authority, finally understood exactly who he'd been tormenting for the past 8 months. The woman who'd saved lives while bullets flew. The medic they'd called Valkyrie. The soldier who'd earned her call sign by carrying the wounded out of hell itself. And he'd treated her like garbage. Outside, the helicopter's rotors were still spinning, waiting. Inside, everything had changed. The silence that followed felt heavier than the rotor wash outside. Emily stood in the center of Trauma 1 with blood drying on her scrubs, and the entire night shift staring at her like she'd grown a second head. The colonel had disappeared upstairs with the patient. The lead operator, Sergeant Marcus Webb, she'd learned his name now, stood near the door with his arms crossed, watching her with an expression somewhere between respect and concern. Cross hadn't moved. He was pressed against the wall near the supply cabinet, face pale, mouth slightly open. Processing. Or maybe just drowning. Melissa broke first. "You were in the military?" Emily pulled off her gloves slowly, dropping them in the biohazard bin. "Yeah." "Like, Army?" "Yeah." "And they called you—" Melissa stopped, looking at Webb for confirmation. "Valkyrie," he supplied. "It wasn't just a call sign. It was a reputation." Emily shot him a look that said, "Shut up," but he didn't take the hint. "She was attached to our ODA team for 8 months in Kandahar. Ran trauma medicine in conditions you wouldn't believe. Saved 43 lives that we know of, probably more." Jordan's eyes were huge. 43? "That's just our unit," Webb said. "She worked with multiple teams, Rangers, Marines, even some agency guys who officially weren't there." Emily's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago." 4 years? Webb said. "We heard you got hit by an IED, then you just vanished." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The tremor in her hand said enough. Cross finally found his voice. It came out strangled. "Why didn't you say anything?" Emily looked at him for the first time since the colonel had left. Her expression was empty, carved out. Would it have mattered? The question landed like a slap. Cross opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know. You didn't want to know." Emily's voice stayed flat. No anger, no heat, just fact. "You wanted someone to feel superior to. I was convenient." Melissa looked away. Jordan suddenly found the floor fascinating. Cross's face flushed. "That's not fair. Fair?" Emily almost laughed. It came out bitter. "You just tried to shock a patient with PEA because you were too arrogant to listen when I told you something was wrong earlier tonight. That man in Bay 4, the one who coded, I flagged him an hour before he crashed. You blew me off. That was different." "Different how?" Emily stepped toward him, not threatening, just tired. "Because you're the doctor, and I'm the nurse? Because you went to medical school, and I just kept people alive in a war zone?" Cross had no answer. Webb shifted his weight. "Lieutenant, don't." Emily cut him off without looking at him. "I'm not a lieutenant anymore. I'm just Emily. I stock supplies and clean up blood and try to keep my head down. That's it." "That's bullshit," Webb said bluntly. "What you just did was muscle memory." Emily pulled her hair out of the bun and immediately regretted it when several strands stuck to the blood on her neck. "Nothing more." "You saved Major Garrett's life." Emily stopped. "Major Garrett." She turned slowly. "That was Garrett." Webb nodded. You know him? He was a captain when I knew him, Special Forces. We worked a couple of ops together. She rubbed her face, exhaustion hitting hard now that the adrenaline was fading. Is he going to make it? If anyone can pull him through, it's the surgeons here. But he wouldn't have made it to surgery without you. Emily said nothing. She was staring at the floor where Garrett's blood had pooled, already turning brown at the edges. The ER doors opened again. A hospital administrator hurried in. Margaret Chen, the night supervisor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who ran the hospital like a military operation. Ironic, considering. What in the name of... She stopped, taking in the scene. Blood, soldiers, shell-shocked staff. Someone want to tell me why there are 2 military helicopters on my helipad and armed personnel in my ER? Webb straightened. Ma'am, we had a critical casualty that required immediate... I'm not talking to you. Margaret's eyes locked on Cross. Dr. Cross, you're the attending. Explain. Cross looked like a deer in headlights. We had a patient, military, and Carter... He gestured helplessly at Emily. Margaret's gaze shifted. Carter? You were involved in this? Emily met her eyes. I stabilized the patient. He's in surgery now. She did more than stabilize him, Webb interjected. She diagnosed a tension pneumothorax Dr. Cross missed and performed an emergency decompression. The patient would be dead otherwise. Margaret's eyebrows climbed. Is that true? Cross's face was bright red now. The situation was chaotic. Is it true? Silence. Yes, Cross finally said. Margaret looked at Emily with new eyes, calculating, reassessing. We need to talk, she said. My office, now. Emily shook her head. I need to finish my shift. Your shift is over. Jordan, Melissa, cover the rest of the night. Dr. Cross, I want a full incident report on my desk by 700. Margaret's tone left no room for argument. Carter, you're with me. Emily wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out of the hospital and keep walking until she hit the state line. But Webb was watching her with that expression soldiers got when they recognized one of their own. The other nurses were watching too, but differently now. Not with contempt, with something like awe. And that was worse. She followed Margaret out of the trauma bay. The administrative offices were on the second floor, away from the controlled chaos of the ER. Margaret's office was neat, organized, with commendations on the wall and family photos on the desk. She closed the door and gestured to a chair. Emily remained standing. Sit. I'm fine, Margaret sighed. You're covered in blood and you look like you're about to pass out. Sit down. Emily sat, mostly because her legs were shaking. Margaret settled behind her desk, steepling her fingers. How long have you been working here? 8 months? And in those 8 months, has Dr. Cross treated you the way I saw him treat you tonight? Emily didn't answer immediately. She was watching Margaret's face, trying to read the angle. I need to know, Margaret pressed. Has there been a pattern of disrespect or abuse? Why does it matter now? Because a military officer nearly died tonight, and from what I just heard, it almost happened because Dr. Cross ignored your clinical judgment. Margaret's voice was firm. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen, possibly criminal negligence. So I need to know, is this the first time or has this been ongoing? Emily looked at her hands. The tremor was back. It's been ongoing. What form has it taken? He undermines me in front of patients and staff, dismisses my assessments, blames me when things go wrong. Emily's voice stayed level. Tonight wasn't unusual. It was just the first time someone with rank was around to see it. Margaret's jaw tightened. Have you filed any formal complaints? No. Why not? Emily almost laughed. Because I'm a nurse with shaky hands and a gap in my employment history. He's a surgeon with credentials and connections. Who do you think the hospital would believe? Margaret sat back in her chair. You're a former military. Yes. What branch? What did you do? Emily hesitated. This was the line. Once she crossed it, there was no going back to invisible. Army, combat medic, special operations support. Margaret's eyes widened slightly. The sergeant downstairs called you lieutenant. That was my rank when I separated. And the call sign? Valkyrie? Soldiers give you nicknames. It doesn't mean anything. Sergeant Webb seemed to think it meant quite a lot. Margaret leaned forward. He said you saved 43 lives. He's exaggerating. Is he? Emily stood abruptly. Are we done? I'd like to go home. Not yet. Margaret's voice softened. Emily, I'm not the enemy here, but I need to understand what happened tonight so I can protect this hospital, and you, from the fallout. There won't be any fallout. The patient is stable. Case closed. A United States Army major was brought into this facility by Special Operations Forces. That doesn't just disappear quietly. As if on cue, there was a knock on the door. Margaret called out, "Come in!" The colonel from earlier stepped inside. Up close, he looked older, late 50s, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. His name tape read, Morrison. He looked at Emily. Lieutenant Carter. Emily stood automatically. Old habits. Sir. Morrison's expression was unreadable. Major Garrett is out of surgery. Stable, but critical. They're expecting a full recovery. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. That's good. Thanks to you. Morrison turned to Margaret. Ma'am, I need to speak with Lieutenant Carter privately. Margaret bristled. This is my hospital, Colonel, and she's my employee. I understand, but this is a military matter. She's not active duty anymore. No, but Major Garrett is. And what happened tonight involves classified operations. Morrison's tone was polite but immovable. I need 10 minutes. Margaret looked at Emily. Do you want me to stay? Emily shook her head. It's fine. Margaret left, throwing one last warning glance at Morrison. The door closed. Morrison studied Emily for a long moment. You look like hell, Lieutenant. I'm not a lieutenant anymore, sir. Once an officer, always an officer. He gestured to the chair. Sit. This time Emily obeyed without argument. Something about Morrison's presence made her spine straighten and her guard drop simultaneously. He sat across from her, removing his cover and setting it on the desk. Major Garrett speaks highly of you. When he was coherent enough to talk, the first thing he asked was whether Valkyrie was still around. Emily's throat tightened. I didn't know it was him until after. Would it have mattered? No, I would have helped either way. Morrison nodded. That's what I thought. Your file says you were medically retired after an IED incident in November 2021. That's correct. Traumatic brain injury, nerve damage to the left hand, PTSD. Morrison's voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind. You were offered a medical board and full disability. You declined and requested separation instead. Emily said nothing. Why? Because I couldn't do my job anymore. She held up her left hand. The tremor was visible. You can't run trauma medicine in a combat zone when you can't hold a scalpel steady. But you can do it in a civilian ER. The ER is different. There's backup, equipment, time. You didn't have time tonight. Emily looked away. Tonight was an exception. Morrison leaned forward. Emily, I'm going to be direct. Major Garrett wasn't in Colorado on vacation. He was leading a classified operation that went sideways. The men who brought him here are from a special mission unit I can't name. What happened to him can't be made public. I understand operational security, sir. I know you do, but here's the problem. You just saved the life of a high-value asset in front of civilian witnesses. That creates complications. Emily's stomach dropped. Are you telling me I'm in trouble? No, I'm telling you that people are going to ask questions. The hospital, the staff, maybe even the media if word gets out. Morrison's expression was grave. I need to know that you can keep what you saw tonight quiet. I'm not going to talk to anyone. Not even to defend yourself? Emily frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Cross is probably already building a narrative where he's the hero and you're the rogue nurse who overstepped. If you can't talk about your military background, you can't counter that story. Emily's jaw clenched. I don't care what Cross says. You should. Because from what I saw downstairs, he's going to bury you if someone doesn't stop him. Then let him. Emily stood again, restless. I just want to do my job and go home. I don't want attention. I don't want recognition. I just want to be left alone. Morrison stood too. That's not going to happen now. You're back on the radar. Then I'll quit. And go where? Do what? Morrison's voice was firm, but not harsh. You're a talented medic, Emily, possibly one of the best I've ever seen. Hiding that doesn't serve anyone. It serves me. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, you look miserable. Emily flinched. Morrison softened slightly. I'm not here to pressure you back into service. You earned your separation. But I'm here to tell you that the team downstairs wants to thank you properly. Sergeant Webb especially. You saved his life once. Now you've saved his commander's. That means something to them. I don't need thanks. Maybe not, but they need to give it. Morrison picked up his cover. They're waiting in the ER break room. 5 minutes. That's all they're asking. I look like I lost a fight with a slaughterhouse. They've seen worse. Emily wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out the back entrance and disappear into the parking lot. But she owed Webb. She owed all of them. 5 minutes, she said. Morrison nodded. That's all. They walked back downstairs together. The ER had calmed down. Only 2 patients now, both stable. Melissa and Jordan were at the nurse's station, whispering furiously. They stopped when they saw Emily. The break room was at the end of the hallway. Morrison opened the door. Inside, 4 operators stood waiting. Webb. 3 others she didn't recognize. They all straightened when she entered. Webb stepped forward. Lieutenant Carter. Just Emily. Emily, then. He gestured to the others. This is Ramirez, Jackson, and Lee. We all served with Major Garrett at various points. Emily nodded at them. They nodded back. We wanted to say thank you, Webb continued. What you did tonight was my job. No, Ramirez cut in. He was shorter than Webb, stocky, with a scar running down his neck. Your job is stocking supplies and dealing with drunks. What you did tonight was way above that. The Major's alive because of you, Jackson added, tall, lean, with quiet eyes. That matters. Emily didn't know what to say. She'd spent 4 years trying to forget this feeling, the weight of being responsible for someone's survival, the gratitude that felt too big to carry. How's he doing? She asked instead. Surgeon said he'll be in ICU for a few days, but he'll make it, Webb said. They got the bleeding stopped, repaired the liver. The chest tube you placed probably bought him the time he needed. Emily nodded. Good. That was good. Lee, who hadn't spoken yet, stepped forward. He was the youngest, maybe mid-20s, with nervous energy. I wasn't in Kandahar, he said, but I've heard the stories about the convoy ambush, the fire-based siege, the medic who ran into fire to pull people out. Emily's chest tightened. Those are just stories. No, they're not. Webb's voice was firm. I was there for the convoy. You pulled 3 of us out of burning vehicles while we were taking contact. You worked on us in an open field with rounds hitting all around. You didn't stop until the birds came. Emily remembered. The smell of diesel and burning flesh. The screaming. The way her hands moved on autopilot while her brain shut down everything except the task in front of her. She also remembered the nightmares that followed. I'm glad you made it, she said quietly. We all are. Webb hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black coin. A challenge coin. He held it out. From the team. It's not much, but I can't take that. Why not? Because I'm not part of the team anymore. Webb pressed the coin into her hand anyway. You'll always be part of the team. Emily looked down at the coin. It was heavy, solid. The unit insignia was etched on one side. On the other, a single word, Valkyrie. Her vision blurred. I need to go, she said abruptly. She turned and walked out before anyone could stop her. The hallway was too bright, too loud. She made it to the staff bathroom and locked herself inside. The tremor was back full force. She gripped the edge of the sink and tried to breathe. 4 years. 4 years of hiding. Of staying small. Of pretending the war hadn't happened. And now it was all coming apart. She splashed cold water on her face and looked at herself in the mirror. Blood on her neck. Exhaustion in her eyes. Hair a mess. She looked exactly like she had after 18-hour shifts in Kandahar. Someone knocked on the door. Occupied, Emily called out. It's Margaret. Emily closed her eyes. I'll be out in a minute. Take your time. But when you're ready, we need to finish our conversation. Emily dried her face and opened the door. Margaret stood in the hallway with 2 cups of coffee. You look like you could use this, she said, offering one. Emily took it. Thanks. They walked back to Margaret's office in silence. This time, when Margaret told her to sit, Emily didn't argue. Margaret settled into her chair. Colonel Morrison filled me in. Not on the details, just that the patient tonight was involved in something classified. That's right. He also said you're one of the most decorated combat medics he's encountered. Emily sipped the coffee. It was terrible. Hospital coffee always was. He also said, Margaret continued, that Dr. Cross has been systematically undermining you since you started here. I can handle Cross. That's not the point. Margaret set down her cup. The point is you shouldn't have to. What I saw tonight was unacceptable, and apparently it's been going on for months. Emily shrugged. It's a job. Every job has difficult people. There's a difference between difficult and abusive. I've dealt with worse. I'm sure you have. But this is my hospital, and I don't tolerate that behavior. Margaret pulled out a file. I'm opening a formal investigation into Dr. Cross's conduct. I need you to document every incident you can remember. Emily's stomach sank. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. It'll just make things worse. For who? Cross? Margaret's eyes were hard. Good. He should face consequences. For me, Emily said bluntly, I file a complaint. I become the problem, the troublemaker, the nurse who can't handle criticism. You're the nurse who saved a life tonight while the surgeon stood there looking incompetent, which is exactly why he'll come after me harder. Emily set down the coffee. I've seen this before. You investigate, maybe you reprimand him, maybe you don't. Either way, I'm marked. He'll make my life hell. And eventually I'll quit or get fired for some manufactured reason. Margaret was quiet for a moment. What if I told you I could guarantee that won't happen? I'd say you can't guarantee anything. Fair point. Margaret leaned back. But I can tell you this, the hospital is already facing potential liability from tonight. Cross nearly killed a patient because he ignored your assessment. That's going in the report whether you cooperate or not. Emily's eyes widened. You're going to throw him under the bus? I'm going to document what happened, which is my job. Margaret's expression was steady. The question is whether you want your side of the story on record, or if you want Cross to control the narrative. There are no sides, there's just what happened. And what happened is you identified a medical emergency that the attending physician missed, twice. Once earlier in the shift with the patient who coded, and again tonight with Major Garrett. Margaret pulled out a notepad. I need you to walk me through both incidents. Timeline, what you observed, what you reported, how Cross responded. Emily knew she was trapped. Margaret wasn't asking anymore, so she talked. She described the patient in Bay 4, the warning signs, Cross's dismissal, the code. Then she described Garrett, the presentation, the misdiagnosis, the intervention. Margaret took notes steadily. When Emily finished, Margaret set down her pen. One more question. Why did you become a nurse instead of a physician? With your experience, you could have gone to medical school. Emily looked at her hands. Because I can't hold a scalpel steady anymore. But you performed an emergency needle decompression tonight. That's different. It's a single motion. Surgical procedures require sustained fine motor control. Emily flexed her fingers. I can't do that reliably. Margaret nodded slowly. What about physician assistant? Nurse practitioner? What about them? You could do more with those credentials, have more authority, be taken more seriously. Emily almost laughed. I don't want more authority. I just want to do my job without being treated like I'm incompetent. You're wasted as a floor nurse. Maybe, but it's what I can handle right now. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Then she closed the file. All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm suspending Dr. Cross pending investigation. He'll be on administrative leave starting immediately. Emily's head snapped up. What? You heard me. You can't do that based on one incident. I can, and I am. The incident with Major Garrett alone is enough. Add in the patient who coded earlier, and I have a pattern of dangerous judgment. Margaret's voice was firm. This is non-negotiable. He'll fight it. Let him. I have documentation now. I have witness statements. I have a military officer who nearly died under his care. Margaret stood. And I have you. I don't want to be part of this. Too late. You already are. Emily stood too, anger flaring. I didn't ask for any of this. No, you didn't. But here we are. Margaret walked around the desk. Emily, I understand you want to hide. I understand you've been through trauma, but you can't keep making yourself small to avoid conflict. Eventually, you disappear completely. The words hit harder than they should have. Emily turned to leave. One more thing, Margaret said. Emily stopped at the door. You're off the schedule for the next 3 days, paid. Consider it mandatory rest after a critical incident. I don't need. It's not optional. Go home, sleep, process what happened. Come back when you're ready. Emily wanted to argue, but she was so tired. She left without another word. The parking lot was dark and cold. Her car was covered in a thin layer of frost. She scraped the windshield on autopilot, got in, and just sat there for a while. The challenge coin was still in her pocket. She pulled it out and turned it over in her palm. Valkyrie. A call sign from another life. She should throw it away. Instead, she put it in the glove compartment and drove home. Her apartment was small and depressing, a studio in a rundown complex on the edge of Iron Ridge. She unlocked the door, dropped her bag, and went straight to the bathroom. The shower was scalding. She stood under the spray until the water ran cold, scrubbing blood and sweat and the weight of the night off her skin. When she got out, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Scars on her left arm from shrapnel, surgical scar on her wrist from the nerve repair, a thin white line across her ribs from a piece of debris that almost killed her. Her body was a map of violence. She pulled on old sweatpants and a t-shirt and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep didn't come. She lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the night. Garrett's face. Webb's salute. Morrison's warning. You're back on the radar. She didn't want to be on anyone's radar. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the name. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Lieutenant Carter? A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Official sounding. Who is this? Special Agent Brian Kowalski, Army Criminal Investigation Division. I need to speak with you about the incident tonight involving Major David Garrett. Emily sat up slowly. I already spoke with Colonel Morrison. I'm aware, but I have additional questions. Can we meet? When? Now would be preferable. Emily looked at the clock. 6:47. I just got off a 12-hour shift. I'm not... This is urgent, Lieutenant. It won't take long. Every instinct she had screamed danger. What's this about? I'd rather discuss it in person. Kowalski's voice was polite but firm. There's a diner 2 blocks from your apartment. Millie's. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone. How did he know where she lived? She got dressed quickly. Jeans, hoodie, boots. Checked the peephole before leaving her apartment. The hallway was empty. She walked to Millie's, keeping her head down, watching for tails. Old habits kicking in. The diner was nearly empty. One waitress, a couple of truckers, and a man in a dark suit sitting in the back booth. Kowalski. He stood when she approached. 30s, clean cut, with the kind of neutral expression that came from years of interrogations. Lieutenant Carter, thanks for meeting me. I'm not a lieutenant anymore. Old habits, he gestured to the booth. Please. Emily sat across from him. The waitress came over, but Kowalski waved her off. He pulled out a badge, flipped it open so she could see. Army CID Legitimate. What's this about? Emily asked. Major Garrett's mission was compromised. We're investigating how. Emily's blood went cold. You think I had something to do with it? Did you? No. Kowalski studied her. You haven't asked what the mission was. Because it's classified and none of my business. Yet you treated the mission commander in a civilian ER with multiple witnesses present. I treated a trauma patient. That's my job. And the fact that you have a prior relationship with Major Garrett? Emily's jaw tightened. We worked together overseas, years ago. I didn't even know it was him until after I stabilized him. Convenient. It's the truth. Kowalski pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. Recognize this? It was a photo. Surveillance footage. Emily standing outside Redwood Regional, talking to someone in a car. Her stomach dropped. That's from 3 weeks ago, Kowalski said, 2 days before Major Garrett's team deployed. Emily stared at the image. She did recognize it. A friend from her Army days had stopped by to say hello. They'd talked for maybe 10 minutes. That's Captain Sarah Vance, Emily said carefully. We served together in Afghanistan. And what did you discuss? Old times, how we were doing, normal stuff. Did she mention Major Garrett? No. Did she mention any ongoing operations? No. We talked about the weather and her kids. Kowalski took the tablet back. Captain Vance is part of Major Garrett's support team, and 3 weeks after she visits you, his mission goes sideways and he ends up in your ER. You see why we have questions. Emily's hands clenched under the table. Are you accusing me of something? I'm trying to understand the coincidence. There is no coincidence. I didn't know Garrett was in Colorado. I didn't know about any mission. I didn't do anything except my job. Then why are you so nervous? Because an Army investigator showed up at my door at 7 in the morning asking about classified operations. That makes anyone nervous. Kowalski leaned back, watching her. You left the Army under difficult circumstances. I was medically retired after you declined an investigation into the IED incident that injured you. Emily went very still. What investigation? The one into whether the attack was an inside job. Kowalski's eyes were cold now. Your convoy was hit in an area that was supposed to be secure. The insurgents knew exactly where you'd be. Someone tipped them off. I don't know anything about that. Don't you? Because your name came up in the inquiry. Questions about who you'd been in contact with, whether you'd been compromised. Emily's heart was pounding. I was cleared. You were never formally investigated. You took medical retirement before it could proceed. Because I was injured, because I couldn't do my job anymore. Emily's voice was rising. I didn't run. I didn't hide anything. Then why did Captain Vance visit you? I told you, and I think you're lying. Kowalski leaned forward. I think you've been in contact with Garrett's team. I think you knew they were here, and I think when things went wrong, you were their contingency. Emily stood abruptly. I'm done talking. Sit down, Lieutenant. I'm not a lieutenant, and unless you're arresting me, I'm leaving. Kowalski smiled. It wasn't friendly. You're not under arrest, yet. But I'd advise you to stay available. We'll be in touch. Emily walked out of the diner without looking back. Her hands were shaking again. Not from nerve damage this time. From rage and fear. Because someone was setting her up, and she had no idea who or why. Emily made it halfway back to her apartment before she realized someone was following her. A black SUV, 2 cars back, matching her pace too precisely. She turned left at the next intersection without signaling. The SUV followed. Her pulse kicked up. She'd been out of the game for 4 years, but the instincts were still there, sharp and immediate. She pulled into a gas station, parked near the air pump where she could see the street. The SUV drove past slowly, tinted windows, government plates. Not Kowalski's vehicle, someone else. Emily sat there gripping the steering wheel, thinking. The investigator's accusations didn't make sense. She hadn't been in contact with Garrett's team. She hadn't known about any mission. But someone wanted it to look like she had. Her phone buzzed, unknown number again. She almost didn't answer. What? Emily, it's Webb. The sergeant's voice was tight. Where are you? Why? Because CID just left the hospital asking questions about you. They're saying you might be involved in what happened to Garrett. Emily closed her eyes. I know. I just met with one of them. Kowalski? Yeah. Webb swore. Listen to me carefully. Do not talk to him again without a lawyer. Do not go anywhere alone. And do not trust anyone claiming to be investigating this. Why? What's going on? I can't say over the phone. Can you get to the hospital? Back entrance, loading dock area, 20 minutes. Emily checked her mirrors. The SUV was parked across the street now, engine running. I'm being followed. Webb was quiet for 3 seconds. What kind of vehicle? Black SUV? Government plates? Echo 76 something. That's not one of ours. His voice went hard. Lose them and get here. Now. The line went dead. Emily started the car and pulled back onto the street. The SUV followed immediately. She took the next right, then a quick left into a residential neighborhood. The SUV stayed close. She accelerated through a yellow light. They ran the red. Not surveillance. Pursuit. Her apartment was 10 minutes away, but she couldn't go there now. Couldn't lead them home. She needed somewhere public with witnesses. The hospital parking garage. She took a hard right onto the main road, pushing the aging Honda past 60. The SUV matched her speed. She weaved through morning traffic, cutting off a delivery truck that blared its horn. 2 more turns and she saw the hospital ahead. She swung into the garage entrance doing 40, tires squealing on the concrete ramp, up to level 3. She parked between a minivan and a pickup truck, killed the engine, and ran. The loading dock was on the north side of the building. She took the stairs down, heart hammering. Behind her, she heard the SUV's engine echoing in the garage. She hit the ground floor running and pushed through the emergency exit into the cold morning air. Webb was waiting by a dumpster with 2 other operators. He grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a delivery truck. "You okay?" "Fine. Who the hell is following me?" "We're working on it." He handed her a radio earpiece. "Put this in. Stay with Jackson." Jackson, the tall, quiet operator from last night, nodded at her. He had a pistol in a concealed holster and eyes that tracked every shadow. Emily's stomach twisted. "This is serious." "Yeah." Webb's expression was grim. "Major Garrett woke up an hour ago. First thing he said was your name. Second thing was that someone on his team sold him out." The world tilted. "What?" "There's a leak. Someone with access to operational planning gave up his location. The ambush wasn't random." Webb glanced at Jackson. "And now CID is asking about you because your name showed up in intercepts." Emily's mind raced. "What intercepts?" "Intercepted communications between an unknown source and a hostile group operating in the region. Your name was mentioned, your service record, your connection to Garrett." Webb's jaw was tight. "Someone's been feeding information about you to people who want Garrett dead." "That's insane. I didn't—" "We know you didn't, but someone's framing you." He looked toward the parking garage. "And whoever's following you isn't CID. Real investigators don't run red lights." Emily felt cold. "Then who are they?" "Cleanup crew would be my guess. If you disappear, you can't defend yourself. Frame closes neat and tidy." Jackson's radio crackled. He listened, then looked at Webb. 2 men just entered the loading area, armed. Webb pulled Emily toward the service entrance. "Inside, now." They moved fast through the maze of hospital corridors. Laundry, storage. Maintenance tunnels Emily didn't even know existed. Jackson led, weapon drawn but concealed under his jacket. Webb stayed close to Emily. "Where are we going?" she asked. "ICU. Garrett wants to talk to you." "That's the first place they'll look." "That's why we have a welcoming committee." They took a service elevator to the 4th floor. When the doors opened, Emily saw what Webb meant. 4 more operators in civilian clothes positioned at strategic points. The hallway was locked down without looking like it was locked down. Ramirez met them at the ICU entrance. "He's awake but weak. 5 minutes max." Emily followed Webb into the unit. The lighting was dim, machines beeping steadily. Garrett was in the corner room, hooked to monitors and IV lines. His chest was bandaged and his face was gray, but his eyes were sharp when he saw her. "Valkyrie." Emily approached the bed slowly. "Major." "David, we're past formalities." He tried to shift and winced. "Webb told you about the leak?" "Just now." "Then you know someone's setting you up to take the fall." His voice was rough but steady. "The insurgents who hit us knew exactly where we'd be and when. They had details only someone on the inside could provide. After they shot me, I heard one of them on the radio. He said, 'The medic was right. He's here.'" Emily's blood went cold. "The medic?" "That's what he said." Garrett coughed, pain flickering across his face. "I think they meant you. Someone told them you'd be able to confirm I was in the area. But I didn't know you were here." "I know, but someone made it look like you did." He gestured weakly toward a folder on the side table. "Webb, show her." Webb opened the folder and pulled out printed documents. Emails, text messages, photos, all allegedly from Emily's accounts. She stared at them. "This isn't real. I never sent these." "We know, but they're good forgeries. Routing through your IP address. Timestamps matching periods when you were off work." Webb pointed to one email. "This one was supposedly sent to a contact in Syria 3 weeks ago. Details about military movements in Colorado." Emily felt sick. "Someone hacked my accounts and fed the information into intelligence channels where it would get noticed." Garrett's breathing was labored. "You're the perfect patsy. Former military, access to medical facilities, connection to me. PTSD and a history of isolation that makes you look unstable." "Who would do this?" That's what we're trying to figure out. Garrett closed his eyes briefly. But whoever it is has resources. They've penetrated operational security and civilian infrastructure. They knew you'd be working last night. They knew my team would bring me here. Emily's mind was spinning. The investigator this morning, Kowalski, he showed me surveillance photos, said I'd been in contact with your team. Did he show you a badge? Yes. Real one? Emily hesitated. I think so. Webb pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. This is the real Special Agent Brian Kowalski, Army CID, stationed at Fort Carson. The man in the photo was 20 years older than the one she'd met. That wasn't him, Emily whispered. No, Webb said. That was someone pretending to be him, which means they got close enough to question you, establish a narrative, and probably record the conversation. Emily sat down hard in the visitor's chair. They're building a case against me. Yes. Garrett opened his eyes again. But we're going to tear it apart. Webb, get Morrison on the line. We need to move fast. Webb stepped out to make the call. Emily looked at Garrett. Why me? What do I have that's worth this much effort? You're not the target. You're the distraction. Garrett's expression was dark. Someone wants my operation shut down and me discredited. Pinning it on a traumatized veteran with a history of medical separation plays into every conspiracy theory about broken soldiers going rogue. It muddies the water while the real leak stays hidden. So what do? We prove you're innocent and we find the real traitor. He coughed again, harder this time. The monitor beeped a warning. A nurse appeared in the doorway. You need to leave. His vitals are spiking. Emily stood. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Not your fault. Garrett reached out and gripped her wrist with surprising strength. You saved my life. Now let me save yours. Trust Webb. Do what he says. She nodded. The nurse ushered her out. Webb was in the hallway, talking urgently into his phone. When he saw Emily, he ended the call. Morrison's mobilizing a security team. We're moving you to a safe location. I can't just disappear. I have a job. You're suspended, remember? 3 days off. Webb started walking and Emily followed automatically. Right now you're a target. We need to get you somewhere secure while we figure out who's running this operation. They took the service elevator down. Jackson and Ramirez flanked them. Emily felt like a prisoner being transferred. Where are we going? She asked. Air Force installation 40 miles north. It's secure and off the books. Webb handed her a phone. This is clean. Only 3 numbers programmed. Mine, Morrison's, and Garrett's aide. No one else. Emily took the phone. What about my apartment, my things? Already being handled. A team will sweep your place, pull anything important, and check for surveillance devices. The elevator opened into the basement parking level. Different from where Emily had entered. A gray van was waiting, engine running, windows tinted. Webb opened the side door. Get in. Emily hesitated. Everything was moving too fast. 4 hours ago, she'd been trying to sleep. Now she was being shuttled to a military installation because someone had framed her for treason. What if they're wrong? She said quietly. What if I'm just a nurse and this is all a coincidence? Webb looked at her steadily. Do you believe that? Emily thought about the fake investigator, the surveillance, the intercepts with her name. No. Then get in the van. She climbed inside. Jackson got in beside her. Webb took the front passenger seat. The driver was another operator she didn't recognize. They pulled out of the parking garage into morning traffic. Emily watched the hospital disappear behind them. Redwood Regional, where she'd spent 8 months invisible and exhausted. Now it felt like another life. How long will I be gone? She asked. As long as it takes, Webb said. To do what? To find out who wants you dead and why. The drive took 50 minutes. They headed north into the mountains, taking back roads that wound through dense pine forests. Emily watched the landscape change, feeling further from reality with each mile. Jackson sat silent beside her, weapon resting on his thigh. Professional. Alert. She recognized the posture from her own deployments. You were in Kandahar? She asked. Helmand Province. Different unit, same war. He didn't look at her. I heard about the firebase siege. They said you kept 16 men alive during a 3-day assault. Emily didn't want to talk about it. Feels like someone else's life now. Does it? She thought about last night, the way her hands had moved, the way her brain had shifted into combat mode without hesitation. "No," she admitted. "Not really." They drove through a small mountain town, maybe 200 people, and kept going. 10 miles later, they turned onto an unmarked road. A gate appeared, manned by Air Force security. Webb showed credentials. The gate opened. The installation was small, a few buildings, a helipad, communications towers, designed for quick operations, not permanent presence. They parked outside a 2-story structure that looked like administrative housing. Webb led Emily inside and up to a second-floor room. "This is yours, secure. Bathroom down the hall. Cafeteria on the first floor." He pointed to a laptop on the desk. "That's connected to a closed network. You can access case files, intelligence reports, anything Morrison clears you for." Emily looked around. The room was basic. Bed, desk, chair, small window overlooking the forest. A cage. "How long?" she asked again. "I don't know," Webb said honestly. "Morrison's working with CID, the real CID, to trace the forgeries. We're running down the intercepts. Garrett's team is going through mission logs to find the leak. And I just sit here. You stay alive." Webb's expression softened slightly. "I know this isn't what you want, but you walked into a burning Humvee to pull me out when you could have stayed in cover. Let me return the favor." Emily sat on the bed. "Who do you think is doing this? Someone with access to military intelligence and civilian infrastructure. Someone who knew Garrett's operation and your background. That's a short list." "Cross?" Webb raised an eyebrow. "The surgeon?" "He had access to my personnel file. He knew my schedule. He hated me enough to want me gone." Emily rubbed her face. "I know it sounds paranoid. It doesn't. We're looking at everyone." Webb checked his watch. "I need to get back. Jackson's staying on site. You need anything? Tell him." He left. Emily sat alone in the quiet room. Through the window, she could see the forest stretching endlessly. Isolated, safe, trapped. She opened the laptop. A folder labeled Case File, E. Carter, was already on the desktop. She clicked it. Photos, documents, surveillance footage. The manufactured evidence against her laid out in brutal detail. Someone had spent months building this. Carefully, methodically. She scrolled through the intercepts. Her name in communications between unknown parties. References to the medic and asset in Colorado. Mentions of Garrett's movements. Then she saw something that made her stop. A photo. Taken outside Redwood Regional 3 weeks ago. Emily talking to Sarah Vance through the car window. But the angle was wrong. This wasn't from the hospital's security cameras. This was from across the street. A deliberate surveillance position. Someone had been watching her long before Garrett's mission went bad. Emily zoomed in on the image. In the background, barely visible, was another vehicle. Dark sedan. She enhanced the image until she could make out part of the license plate. Colorado registration. Government prefix. She ran the partial plate through the database Webb had given her access to. 3 matches. 2 were pool vehicles from Fort Carson. The third was registered to Redwood Regional Hospital. Administrative use. Emily's heart started pounding. She dug deeper. The vehicle log showed it had been checked out regularly over the past 6 months. Always the same person. Dr. Damian Cross. Emily sat back, mind racing. Cross had access to her schedule, her personnel file, her movements. Cross had been at the hospital when Garrett arrived. Cross had tried to shock Garrett inappropriately, which would have killed him if Emily hadn't intervened. What if that wasn't incompetence? What if it was intentional? She grabbed the secure phone and called Webb. "Yeah?" "I need you to run a background check on Dr. Damian Cross. Full deep dive, financial records, travel history, communications, everything." "The surgeon? Why?" "Because he had access to me and he had opportunity to sabotage Garrett's treatment." Emily pulled up the vehicle log. "And because he's been surveilling me for months." Webb was quiet. "Send me what you have." Emily forwarded the files. "How fast can you get this?" "Morrison can have preliminary results in a few hours. Full workup by tonight." She heard keyboard clicking. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Cross isn't just an arrogant doctor. I'm thinking he's the leak." "That's a serious accusation." "I know, but it fits." Emily stood, pacing the small room. "He undermined me constantly. isolated me, made sure I stayed invisible. Why? So no one would take me seriously when things fell apart. He had my schedule, knew when I'd be working. He could have tipped off whoever was running this operation. But what's his motive? Emily pulled up Cross's personnel file from the hospital database. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. She spent the next 3 hours digging through every piece of information she could access. Cross's background was cleaner than it should be. Medical school at Columbia, residency at Johns Hopkins. Spotless record, too spotless. She found a gap. 6 months during his residency where his location wasn't accounted for. The official record said research leave, but there was no publication, no grant, no supervising physician listed. 6 months of nothing. Emily called Webb again. I need you to check something. Cross took leave from his residency in 2019, March through August. I need to know where he was. On it. 2 hours later, Webb called back. You're not going to believe this. Emily's hands tightened on the phone. Try me. Cross spent 4 months in Syria. Medical volunteer work with an NGO operating near the Turkish border. Emily's blood went cold. What NGO? Humanitarian Medical Alliance. Sounds legitimate, but get this. 3 of their staff members were later flagged by intelligence as having ties to foreign operative networks. The organization folded in 2020 under suspicion of being a front. For who? The file doesn't say. But 2 of the flagged individuals were connected to groups that have targeted U.S. military operations. Emily sat down slowly. Cross was recruited. Looks like it. He comes back to the States, finishes his residency, gets a job at a hospital in Colorado near multiple military installations. Webb's voice was tight. He's a sleeper. And I was his target. Emily's mind was racing. They needed someone to frame, someone with military background and access to Garrett. Cross spent months positioning me, isolating me, discrediting me, making sure no one would believe me if I pushed back. Then when Garrett's mission was greenlit, Cross fed them the details and set you up to take the fall. Webb swore. This is bigger than we thought. Where's Cross now? Hospital put him on administrative leave yesterday. He should be home. Should be? We're checking now. Webb paused. Emily, stay put. We're sending a team to bring him in. What if he runs? He won't get far. But Emily had a bad feeling. Cross was smart, careful. He'd built this operation over years. He wouldn't wait around to get caught. Webb, I know, we're moving fast. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains. She'd been here less than 12 hours, but it felt like days. She pulled up Cross's file again. There had to be something else, something she'd missed. Then she saw it. A notation in his hospital records. Emergency contact. Dr. Rebecca Sharp. Redwood Regional Hospital, Director of Surgical Services. Emily frowned. Sharp was Cross's boss, but why would she be his emergency contact instead of family? She ran Sharp's background, and everything clicked into place. Rebecca Sharp, age 54, medical degree from Stanford, but before medical school she'd served in Army intelligence for 6 years, specialized in human intelligence operations. She'd recruited Cross. Emily grabbed the phone and called Webb. It rang 4 times before he answered. Tell me you got him. Negative. Cross is gone. Apartment's cleared out. No trace. It's not just Cross. It's his boss. Dr. Rebecca Sharp. She's former Army intelligence. She's running him. Webb was silent for a beat. Are you sure? Check her file. She served before medical school. She has the training and the access. Emily pulled up the hospital's administrative records. And she's the one who hired me. She knew my background from day one. Why would she hire you if you were going to be the patsy? Because it looks better. Poor traumatized veteran gets a job, tries to start over, but her PTSD makes her unstable. She reaches out to old contacts, gets manipulated, becomes a security risk. Emily's voice was hard. It's a perfect narrative, and Sharp had a front row seat to make sure it played out right. Webb was typing rapidly. Morrison needs to hear this. Stay on the line. Emily waited, heart pounding. Then she heard something outside her door, footsteps, slow, deliberate. She stood moving toward the window. The doorknob turned. Emily grabbed the desk chair, the only weapon in the room. The door opened. Jackson stepped inside, weapon drawn. Blood ran down the side of his face from a gash above his ear. "We've got a problem," he said. Then the building's lights went out, and Emily heard gunfire erupt from the floor below. Jackson's blood dripped onto the floor in steady drops, while automatic weapons fire tore through the building below them. Emily grabbed his arm and pulled him fully into the room, slamming the door shut. "How many?" she asked. "4 that I saw. Maybe more." Jackson pressed his hand against the gash on his head. "They came through the perimeter like they had the access codes, killed 2 guards before anyone knew they were inside." Emily moved to the window. The forest was dark, but she could see muzzle flashes near the main entrance. The attackers were advancing methodically, suppressing any resistance. "Where's your backup?" "Dead or pinned down." Jackson checked his weapon, a Glock 19 with 1 magazine. "We need to move. They'll sweep floor by floor." Emily's mind shifted into the cold calculation she'd learned in Kandahar. Evaluate, adapt, survive. "The roof," she said. "No extraction available. They jammed communications." "Not for extraction, for position." Emily grabbed the laptop and pulled the secure phone from her pocket. Still no signal. "If they're jamming, they brought portable equipment, usually ground-level deployment. Roof gives us height advantage and line of sight." Jackson looked at her with new respect. "You've done this before. Different continent, same principle." They moved into the hallway. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. Below them, the gunfire intensified. Voices shouting in English, tactical calls, room-clearing procedures. Professional. Emily and Jackson reached the stairwell. She went first, moving quietly despite the chaos. The roof access was 1 floor up. The door was locked. Jackson kicked it twice. The frame splintered but held. Footsteps echoed below them. Close. Emily grabbed Jackson's weapon and fired 3 rounds into the lock mechanism. The door flew open. They scrambled onto the roof and Jackson pushed a ventilation unit against the door. The roof was flat, surrounded by a low wall. Emily moved to the edge and looked down. 4 vehicles at the main entrance. Men moving between them with military precision. "They're not here to capture you," Jackson said quietly. "I know." Emily scanned the area. "They're here to erase the problem." Her mind was working fast now, cutting through fear and focusing on variables. Cross was gone. Sharp was running the operation. This was cleanup. Eliminate Emily, destroy the evidence, close the frame. But they'd made a mistake. They'd come to a military installation where everything was recorded. "Security cameras," Emily said. "Even with power out, they run on battery backup. Everything happening right now is being documented." Jackson's eyes widened. "The server room, ground floor, east wing. Can you access it remotely?" "Not with comms jammed. But if we can get the footage uploaded to an off-site server before they destroy it." An explosion rocked the building, the east wing. They'd already thought of it. Emily swore. "They're thorough." "Yeah." Jackson was looking pale from blood loss. "We're not getting out of this." "Yes, we are." Emily pulled him away from the edge. "Sit down before you pass out." She tore a strip from her shirt and wrapped it around his head, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. Combat medicine. Muscle memory. "You need a hospital," she said. "Get in line." Emily almost smiled. Then the roof access door shuddered. Someone was forcing it from the other side. She picked up Jackson's weapon and moved to cover. "How many rounds left?" 12. "Make them count." The door burst open. 2 men in tactical gear came through fast and professional. Emily fired twice. 1 man went down. The other rolled behind the ventilation unit. Jackson pulled a backup pistol from his ankle holster and fired blind around the corner. The second attacker retreated into the stairwell. "We just bought 30 seconds, Jackson said. Emily was already moving. She grabbed the downed attacker's rifle, an M4 variant with a full magazine, and his radio. The radio crackled. A calm voice came through. "Roof team, status?" Emily recognized that voice. Dr. Rebecca Sharp. She was here, personally overseeing the operation. Emily keyed the radio. "Target is mobile, heading east." A pause. Then Sharp's voice again, colder now. "That's not Rodriguez. Who is this?" Emily said nothing. "Emily." Sharp's tone shifted to something almost conversational. "I know you're listening. This doesn't have to end badly for you." Jackson shook his head violently, but Emily keyed the radio again. "You sent a kill team to a military installation. It's already ended badly. For you, perhaps. But think about the narrative. A disturbed veteran with PTSD, armed and dangerous, attacks military personnel. It's tragic, but predictable. Sharp sounded almost sympathetic. Or you can walk away from this. We have resources, a new identity, financial security. You disappear and everyone wins. Except Garrett. Garrett is irrelevant. He'll recover or he won't. Either way, his operation is compromised beyond repair. Sharp's voice hardened. You are always collateral damage, Emily. A means to an end. Don't make it worse than it needs to be. Emily looked at Jackson. He was fading, losing too much blood. She made a decision. East Wing is destroyed, she said into the radio. No footage survives. You win. Sharp was quiet, calculating. Come down unarmed. We'll talk. Sure. Emily dropped the radio and turned to Jackson. Can you shoot? He blinked, trying to focus. Maybe. Good enough. She handed him the Glock. Stay conscious for 5 minutes. That's all I need. What are you doing? Emily picked up the M4 and checked the chamber. Ending this. She moved to the roof's edge on the north side, away from the main entrance. A drainage pipe ran down the exterior wall. Not ideal, but functional. She slung the rifle across her back and started climbing down. The pipe groaned under her weight. Her hand slipped once, scraping skin off her palms. She locked her legs around the pipe and kept going. 20 feet. 30. She dropped the last 10 feet and landed hard, rolling to absorb impact. Pain shot through her ankle, but nothing broke. The north side of the building was quiet. The attackers were focused on the front and roof. Emily stayed low and moved along the wall toward the vehicle bay. The installation's motor pool was a small garage attached to the main building. 3 vehicles inside, 2 Humvees and a supply truck. Emily tried the first Humvee. Locked. The second one's door opened. No keys. She popped the steering column and went to work hot wiring. Her hands shook from adrenaline and the old nerve damage, but she forced them steady. 30 seconds. The engine turned over. She put it in gear and slammed the accelerator. The Humvee burst out of the garage doing 40. She swung toward the main entrance where Sharp's team had positioned their vehicles. Men scattered. Someone opened fire. Rounds punched through the windshield. Emily ducked and kept her foot down. The Humvee smashed into the nearest SUV, T-boning it and sending it spinning into another vehicle. Metal screamed. Airbags deployed. Emily was out the door before the Humvee stopped moving. She rolled, came up with the M4, and put 3 rounds into an attacker trying to flank her. He went down. Return fire came from multiple directions. Emily dove behind the wrecked SUV. Rounds sparked off metal around her. She was outnumbered and outgunned. But she'd created chaos, and chaos created opportunity. She keyed the radio she'd kept. Jackson, you still breathing? Static. Then his weak voice. Barely. Fire everything you have off the north side of the roof. Make noise. On it. 10 seconds later, gunfire erupted from above. Jackson was shooting at nothing, but the attackers didn't know that. 2 of them broke off to reposition. Emily moved while they were distracted. She flanked around the wrecked vehicles and came up behind one attacker focused on the roof. She put him down with a controlled pair to the back. 4 down. Unknown number remaining. She grabbed his radio, different frequency. She cycled through channels until she found the one Sharp was using. Contains the situation. Minimal exposure. Sharp was talking to someone, reporting. Emily listened. Hospital administration will confirm the story. Cross is already out of the country. The Carter woman will be listed as deceased, killed during a PTSD episode. Clean ending. Another voice responded. Male, authoritative. What about Morrison? Morrison suspects but can't prove anything. By the time he assembles a case, the trail will be cold. Emily's blood boiled. They'd planned everything. Cross was the operator, Sharp was the handler, and someone higher was protecting them both. She keyed the radio. You made one mistake. Silence. Then Sharp's voice, tight with anger. You should be dead. Add it to the list of things that didn't go your way tonight. Emily moved between vehicles, staying mobile. I know about Syria. I know about Cross's recruitment. I know you've been running him for 5 years. Knowing and proving are different things. Morrison will prove it. He's probably already tracing your communications. Sharp laughed. Morrison is 60 miles away dealing with a conveniently timed security incident at Fort Carson. He won't be available for hours. Emily's stomach dropped. They'd isolated Morrison too, but Sharp kept talking. You're alone, Emily. No backup, no evidence, no credibility. Even if you survive tonight, who's going to believe you? A traumatized veteran having a breakdown? Her voice was almost pitying. You're fighting ghosts. Emily spotted movement near the main building entrance. Sharp, standing in the shadows, phone to her ear. Too confident, too exposed. You're wrong about one thing, Emily said quietly. What's that? I'm not alone. Headlights appeared on the access road, multiple vehicles moving fast. Sharp saw them too. Her expression changed. The vehicles were military, a convoy, and they weren't stopping at the gate. They crashed through and deployed in formation. Doors flew open. Armed soldiers poured out, establishing a perimeter with practiced efficiency. Colonel Morrison stepped out of the lead vehicle with a megaphone. This is Colonel Morrison, U.S. Army. You are on federal property engaged in hostile action against military personnel. Drop your weapons immediately. Sharp's team hesitated, professional instinct warring with self-preservation. Morrison raised the megaphone again. You have 10 seconds before we engage. 10, 9, 8. 3 of Sharp's people dropped their weapons and raised their hands. The 4th ran. He made it 5 steps before a sniper round from Morrison's team dropped him. Emily stepped out from behind the wrecked SUV, rifle lowered. Morrison's soldiers immediately trained weapons on her. Friendly, she shouted. Emily Carter, Valkyrie. Morrison walked forward, eyes scanning the carnage. He saw the bodies, the wrecked vehicles. Emily standing in the middle of it, covered in blood and dirt. Lieutenant Carter, he said calmly, you look like you've had a day. Sir? Emily's legs were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Jackson's on the roof, wounded, needs immediate evac. Morrison gestured and a medical team ran toward the building. Then he looked at Sharp, who stood frozen near the entrance. Dr. Rebecca Sharp. We've been looking for you. Sharp's face was a mask. I don't know what you think you... Save it! Morrison pulled out a phone and played an audio file. Sharp's voice came through clearly. Cross is already out of the country. The Carter woman will be listed as deceased, killed during a PTSD episode. Sharp went pale. That's from the radio frequency your team was using, Morrison said. We intercepted it 20 minutes ago. It's how we knew where to come. Emily stared. You were listening the whole time. Since you called Webb with your theory about Cross and Sharp, we couldn't get here faster without tipping them off. Morrison's expression was grim. I'm sorry we cut it so close. Emily wanted to be angry, but she was too exhausted. Morrison turned back to Sharp. Rebecca Sharp, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, treason, and about 15 other charges we'll add as we go. You have the right to remain silent. Sharp didn't move as MPs handcuffed her. Her face stayed blank, but her eyes burned with calculation. She was already thinking about lawyers and leverage and ways to minimize damage. Emily walked over and stood directly in front of her. You called me collateral damage, she said quietly. A means to an end. Sharp said nothing. You spent months trying to make me disappear, making me small, making me nothing. Emily's voice stayed level. How does it feel? Sharp's jaw clenched. The MPs led her away. Morrison watched them go, then turned to Emily. We need a full debrief. But first, medical. You're bleeding. Emily looked down. She hadn't noticed the cut on her arm, or the one on her leg. Adrenaline had masked everything. I'm fine. That's an order, Lieutenant. I'm not... Emily stopped. She was too tired to argue. Yes, sir. The medical team set up a triage station near the vehicles. They patched Emily's wounds, nothing serious, mostly lacerations and bruising, while Morrison coordinated the scene. Jackson was brought down from the roof on a stretcher. He was conscious, giving the medics hell about their technique. Emily felt relief wash through her. Webb appeared beside her, materializing out of the chaos like he always did. You good? He asked. Define good. Alive. Then yeah, I'm good. Emily watched the MPs processing the captured attackers. How did Morrison intercept the radio traffic? I gave him the frequency after you called me. He had a signals team standing by. Webb sat down beside her. We knew something was wrong when Cross disappeared. Morrison started putting pieces together. Sharp's background, her connection to Cross, the timeline of your harassment. It all pointed to an organized operation. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because we needed them to commit. If they thought we were onto them, they'd scatter, and we'd lose the chance to bring them down. Webb's expression was apologetic. You were the bait. I'm sorry. Emily should have been angry, but she understood the tactical logic. Did you get Cross? Not yet, but he only has a 6-hour head start and we've frozen his accounts. He won't get far. Webb looked at her. You did good tonight. Kept your head. Made smart calls under pressure. I almost died. But you didn't. You fought back and survived. He stood. That's what Valkyries do. Emily didn't know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. Morrison walked over. Lieutenant, we're transporting you back to Redwood Regional for full medical evaluation. Sergeant Webb will accompany you. What about Garrett? Major Garrett is stable and under guard. He'll recover fully. Morrison's expression softened slightly. He asked about you. Wants to thank you personally once you're both cleared. Emily nodded. What happens now? Now we clean up the mess. Sharp will face a military tribunal. Cross will be extradited when we find him. The manufactured evidence against you will be formally retracted. Morrison paused. You'll be cleared completely. Public acknowledgement of your service. Full restoration of reputation. I don't want public acknowledgement. I just want my job back. You'll have that too, though I suspect you'll get offers for better positions once this becomes known. Emily's stomach turned. She didn't want attention, didn't want recognition. She just wanted to go back to being invisible. But that life was gone now. The convoy drove them back to Iron Ridge as dawn broke over the mountains. Emily sat in silence, watching the landscape change from wilderness to civilization. By the time they reached Redwood Regional, news crews were already gathering outside. Someone had leaked the story, probably intentionally, to control the narrative. Morrison's people created a corridor through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Emily kept her head down and let Webb guide her inside. The ER was different in daylight, busier. The night shift was ending, the day shift arriving. People stopped and stared as Emily walked through. Melissa was at the nurse's station. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, are you okay? Emily didn't answer. She was too tired. They took her to a private room for examination. A doctor she didn't recognize checked her wounds, asked questions about pain and range of motion. Everything was professional and thorough. When he finished, Morrison entered. You're cleared medically. Minor injuries, nothing that won't heal. He handed her a folder. This is the official report. Your service record has been amended to reflect your actions over the past 48 hours. You'll receive commendations. The hospital has been notified that all disciplinary actions against you are void. Emily took the folder but didn't open it. What about Cross? Interpol has his photo. He won't stay hidden long. Morrison sat down across from her. Emily, I know this isn't what you wanted. You came here to disappear, and we dragged you back into the fight. You didn't drag me anywhere. Sharp did that. Fair point. Morrison studied her. What will you do now? Emily looked at her hands. The tremor was still there. Probably always would be. I don't know yet. The Army would take you back. Medical waiver for the nerve damage. You've proven you can still perform under pressure. I'm done with the Army. Then consider contracting, training programs, consulting work. You have skills people need. Emily shook her head. I just want to work in an ER and go home at night. Is that really too much to ask? Morrison smiled slightly. No, it's not. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, you reminded me why we fight. Not for politics or strategy, for people, for the ones who can't fight for themselves. He saluted her. It was an honor, Lieutenant. Emily stood automatically and returned the salute. When Morrison left, she sat alone in the quiet room. An hour later, Webb knocked and entered. Hospital administrator wants to see you. Emily followed him upstairs to the administrative wing. The office belonged to Margaret, the night supervisor from before. Margaret stood when Emily entered. Her expression was complicated. Emily, I owe you an apology. For what? For not seeing what was happening, for letting Cross create a hostile environment, for not protecting you. Margaret gestured to a chair. Please sit. Emily sat. Webb remained standing near the door. Margaret settled behind her desk. Dr. Cross has been terminated effective immediately. Dr. Sharp has been removed from all positions. We're conducting a full review of department policies and implementing new protections for staff. That won't bring back the last 8 months. No, it won't. Margaret's voice was firm. But it will prevent it from happening to someone else. And for what it's worth, I'm offering you a formal apology on behalf of Redwood Regional Hospital and a proposal. Emily waited. We want you to stay. Not as a floor nurse. As an education coordinator. You'd develop training programs, mentor new nurses, work with our trauma team to improve protocols. Margaret slid a document across the desk. It's a promotion, better pay, better hours, and you'd have real authority to make changes. Emily looked at the offer letter without touching it. Why? Because you're exactly what this hospital needs. Someone who understands medicine and leadership. Someone who won't tolerate incompetence or abuse. Margaret leaned forward. And because you've earned it. Emily thought about the offer. More money, more respect, a chance to build something meaningful. But it also meant visibility, responsibility, the weight of other people's expectations. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. Emily stood to leave. One more thing, Margaret said. The entire night shift staff asked me to tell you they're sorry for not standing up for you, for laughing when they should have supported you. Emily looked back. Are they really sorry, or are they just scared of looking bad now that the truth is out? Margaret didn't answer immediately. Does it matter? Yeah, Emily said quietly. It does. She left the office. Webb walked her back to the ER. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. That's fair. He checked his watch. I need to get back to base, but I meant what I said before. You need anything? Call me. I will. Webb hesitated. You know, most people would have broken under what you went through, the isolation, the gaslighting, the attack. But you didn't. I came pretty close. Close doesn't count. You survived. You fought back. You won. He offered his hand. That's not nothing. Emily shook his hand. Thanks, Webb. He left. Emily stood in the ER hallway, unsure what to do next. She wasn't on the schedule. She wasn't injured enough to be admitted. She was just there. A familiar voice called out. Carter? She turned. Jordan was walking toward her, looking nervous. Hey, Jordan said. Can we talk? Emily waited. I'm sorry. For all of it. For laughing when Cross humiliated you. For not speaking up. For being a coward. Jordan's voice cracked. You saved Major Garrett's life and you nearly died because we didn't have your back. That's on us. Emily studied her. You're right. It is. Jordan flinched. But I'm tired of being angry, Emily continued. So here's what I'll say. Do better. When you see someone getting abused, speak up. When you see someone struggling, help. Don't wait until the truth comes out to decide to care. Jordan nodded, eyes wet. I will. I promise. She walked away. Emily turned and found herself face to face with the patient from Bay 4, the man who'd coded. He was in a wheelchair, his wife beside him. You're Emily Carter? He asked. Yes. I'm Robert Hayes. The night I came in with chest pain, he stopped, emotion overwhelming him. My wife told me what happened, that you tried to get the doctor to keep me for observation and he wouldn't listen, that I coded and you helped save my life. Emily didn't know what to say. His wife spoke up. If you hadn't pushed, he'd be dead. The doctors told us he had a pulmonary embolism. It was developing all night. I'm glad you're okay, Emily said quietly. Robert reached out and took her hand. Thank you. For seeing what others missed. For caring when it mattered. Emily felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking. Opening. You're welcome, she managed. They left, and Emily stood alone again in the hallway. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. Lieutenant Carter. This is David Garrett. Morrison gave me your number. I'm being discharged tomorrow. I'd like to buy you a coffee and say thank you properly. No pressure. Just gratitude from one soldier to another. DG. Emily stared at the message. She could say no, could walk away from all of it, the military connections, the recognition, the reminder of who she used to be. Or she could say yes, could accept that the past wasn't something to bury, but something to integrate. She typed back, "Coffee sounds good. EC." The response came immediately. "Outstanding. I'll be in touch." Emily pocketed her phone and walked toward the exit. Outside, the morning sun was bright and cold. News vans were still parked in the lot, but the reporters had mostly dispersed. She got in her car and sat there for a moment. 8 months ago, she'd arrived at this hospital broken and desperate. She'd made herself small, invisible, hoping to disappear into routine. But you couldn't disappear from yourself. The trauma was still there, the scars, the tremor. But so was the strength, the skill. The part of her that ran into fire because someone needed saving. Valkyrie. She started the car. Her phone rang. Morrison's number, she answered. "Yes, sir?" "We found Cross." Emily's heart skipped. "Where?" "Airport in Mexico City, trying to board a flight to Buenos Aires. Mexican authorities have him in custody. Extradition paperwork is already filed." Emily exhaled slowly. "Good. There's more. He's talking. Giving up names. The operation was bigger than we thought. Multiple hospitals, multiple targets. Sharp wasn't the only handler." Morrison's voice was grim. "This is going to take months to unravel." "Will they need me?" "For testimony, yes, but not immediately. You've done enough for now." Emily wasn't sure if that was true, but she accepted it. "Thank you for calling, sir. One last thing. Garrett told me what you said to him in the ICU, about just wanting to do your job and go home." Emily waited. "He said you reminded him why he serves. Not for glory, not for recognition, just to make sure people get to go home safe." Morrison paused. "That's the truest kind of service there is." The line went dead. Emily sat with those words. Then she put the car in gear and drove. Not to her apartment, not yet. She drove to the cemetery on the edge of town where they'd buried the soldiers from her unit who didn't make it home. She visited sometimes when the nightmares got bad. She found the markers she knew by heart, names etched in stone, people she'd fought beside, people she'd tried to save, people she'd failed. She knelt in the cold grass. "I'm still here," she said quietly. "Still fighting, still carrying you forward." The wind moved through the trees. "I think I'm going to be okay." And for the first time in 4 years, she believed it. She stood, saluted the markers, and walked back to her car. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Webb. Cross gave up Sharp's handler. Name is Colonel Richard Preston, stationed at the Pentagon. They arrested him an hour ago. Emily read the message twice. A Pentagon colonel. That was the voice she'd heard on Sharp's radio, the one asking about Morrison. The conspiracy reached higher than anyone thought. Another message came through. There's going to be a formal investigation. Senate hearings. The whole thing. They'll want you to testify. Emily closed her eyes. She'd wanted to disappear, to be left alone. Instead, she was going to be dragged into the spotlight. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the ones who survived had a responsibility to speak for the ones who didn't. She texted back, "I'll do whatever's needed." Webb's response was immediate. "I know you will. That's why you're Valkyrie." Emily put the phone away and started driving home. The apartment looked exactly like she'd left it. Small, depressing, empty, but temporary. She could move, find something better, build a life instead of just surviving one. Her phone rang again. She almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed Redwood Regional, Margaret. She picked up. "Hello? Emily, it's Margaret. I know you need time to think about the position, but something's come up." Emily's stomach tightened. "What?" Dr. Cross had a partner, another physician working at a hospital in Denver. The FBI just arrested her 20 minutes ago. Margaret's voice was shaken. They're sweeping through medical facilities across Colorado looking for more. This is huge. "What do you need from me?" "The FBI wants to interview you. They think Cross may have recruited others while he was here. They need your observations, your recollections, anything that might help identify additional conspirators." Emily sat down heavily. "When?" "They're on their way now. They'll be here in an hour." "I'll be there." She hung up and looked around her apartment. The challenge coin Webb had given her was still in the glove compartment of her car. She went out and retrieved it. Valkyrie. A name she'd tried to leave behind. But maybe names found you when you needed them. She put the coin in her pocket and drove back to the hospital. The FBI agents were waiting in a conference room, two men in suits who introduced themselves as Special Agents Crawford and Lynn. They had files spread across the table and laptop computers running facial recognition programs. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming," Crawford said. "We know this has been a difficult time, but we need your help." Emily sat down. "What do you need to know?" Dr. Cross worked at Redwood Regional for 2 years. During that time, he had access to patient records, staff information, operational protocols. We believe he may have been cultivating additional assets, other medical professionals who could be leveraged or recruited. Lynn pulled up a series of photos on his laptop. "Do you recognize any of these individuals?" Emily looked through them. Doctors, nurses, technicians she'd seen around the hospital. Then she stopped on one photo. Dr. Nathan Pierce, anesthesiologist. He'd started at Redwood Regional 6 months ago. "What about him?" Lynn asked, seeing her reaction. "He's new, transferred from a hospital in Seattle." Emily tried to remember details. "He kept odd hours. Sometimes he'd be in the hospital at 3 a.m. without being on call. I thought it was strange, but I figured he was just dedicated." Crawford and Lynn exchanged glances. "Dr. Pierce is a person of interest," Crawford said carefully. "We can't discuss active investigations, but your observation is helpful." They went through more photos. Emily flagged 2 other staff members whose behavior had seemed unusual. After an hour, Crawford closed his laptop. "Thank you, Ms. Carter. This gives us several leads to pursue." "Is the hospital safe?" Emily asked. "Are patients at risk?" "We don't believe there's immediate danger. The Operation Cross and Sharp we're running was focused on intelligence gathering and targeted operations, not random violence." Lynn's expression was serious. "But we're increasing security measures at medical facilities across the region as a precaution." Emily nodded. "If you need anything else from me, we'll be in touch," Crawford said. "And Ms. Carter, what you did, stopping this conspiracy, exposing the people responsible, that took real courage." Emily didn't feel courageous. She felt exhausted, but she thanked them and left. The ER was quieter now, evening shift. Emily walked through, out of habit, checking on familiar spaces. Melissa saw her and hurried over. "They're calling you a hero," she said. "On the news. They're saying you uncovered a major espionage ring." Emily shook her head. "I just didn't die when they wanted me to." "That's not what Morrison said. He did a press conference. Called you one of the most capable combat medics he'd ever worked with." Melissa's expression was almost awe. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" "Would it have mattered?" Melissa looked away, ashamed. "It should have. We should have treated you better regardless." Emily was about to respond when her phone rang. Garrett's number. She answered. "Hello? Emily, it's David. They're releasing me tonight instead of tomorrow. I'm heading to a hotel near the hospital to recover before I fly back to base. Any chance you're free for that coffee now instead of later?" Emily looked around the ER, at the place that had broken her down and then witnessed her fight back. "Yeah," she said. "I'm free." "Great. There's a place called Summit Brew 2 blocks north. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emily found the coffee shop easily. It was small and warm, the kind of place that served actual good coffee instead of hospital sludge. Garrett was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He looked pale and moved carefully, but he was upright. He stood when he saw her. "Emily." "David, you should be resting." "I've been resting for 2 days. I needed to get out of that hospital room." He gestured to the booth. "Please." They sat. A waitress came by and they ordered coffee. When they were alone again, Garrett spoke. "I owe you my life. Twice, actually. Once in that ER, and again when you figured out it was Cross and Sharp. I was just trying not to get framed for treason. You did more than that. You dismantled their entire operation." Garrett's expression was serious. "Morrison told me everything. How you connected the pieces, how you held off the attack team until backup arrived. That's not just survival. That's tactical thinking under extreme pressure." Emily didn't know what to say. "The Army would be lucky to have you back," Garrett continued. "I'm not going back." "I figured, but I had to say it." He sipped his coffee. "What will you do?" "The hospital offered me a position, education coordinator. It's a promotion." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know yet." Emily looked out the window at the darkening street. "Part of me wants to say no, to find someplace quiet where nobody knows my name or my history. And the other part? The other part thinks maybe I'm tired of hiding. Garrett nodded slowly. You know what I learned in special operations? The best people are the ones who don't want the spotlight but step into it anyway because it's the right thing to do. That sounds like a recruitment pitch. It's not. It's an observation. He set down his coffee. You're going to do great things, Emily, whether it's here or somewhere else. And for what it's worth, you have my support and my recommendation whenever you need it. Emily felt her throat tighten. Thank you. They talked for another hour about the war, about recovery, about the strange liminal space between soldier and civilian. When Emily finally left, the night was fully dark and the temperature had dropped. She drove home slowly, thinking. The apartment felt different when she walked in. Not bigger or better, just less suffocating. She opened her laptop and pulled up the job offer from Margaret. Read it carefully this time. Education coordinator, trauma protocol development, staff training, and mentorship. It was a real position, real authority, real ability to change how the hospital functioned. She could prevent another cross from terrorizing vulnerable staff. She could build something that mattered, or she could walk away, find a different hospital, a different city, start completely fresh. Her phone buzzed. A text from Webb. Cross gave up 12 more names. This thing is massive. You did good, Emily. She put the phone down and stared at the job offer. Then she picked up a pen and signed it. She emailed it to Margaret with a simple message. I accept. When do I start? The response came back 5 minutes later. Monday. Welcome to the team. Emily closed the laptop and sat in the quiet apartment. Outside, the city hummed with life she rarely noticed. Cars, voices, the distant sound of a train. She was still here, still standing, still fighting. Not for glory or recognition, just to make sure people got to go home safe, including herself. Her phone rang one more time. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? A familiar voice, cold, controlled. Dr. Damian Cross. Emily, we need to talk. Emily's hand tightened on the phone. Cross's voice carried the same arrogant edge it always had, even filtered through a cheap burner connection from wherever he was hiding. We have nothing to talk about, she said. Actually, we do. Because in about 6 hours, the FBI is going to realize they grabbed the wrong man in Mexico City. Emily went cold. What are you talking about? The person they arrested was my brother. Similar build, same passport photo from 10 years ago, when we looked more alike. Cross sounded almost amused. He owed me a favor. By the time they figure it out, I'll be somewhere without an extradition treaty. Then why are you calling me? Because I want you to know something. His tone shifted, losing the smugness. I didn't want it to go this far. The plan was simple. Discredit you enough that when Garrett's mission failed, you'd be the obvious scapegoat. No one was supposed to die. Sharp escalated things without authorization. You're trying to justify attempted murder? I'm trying to explain that you were never the target. You were just convenient. Cross paused. I actually respected your skills. You're a better medic than I'll ever be a surgeon. But Sharp needed someone with a military background and psychological vulnerabilities. You fit the profile. Emily's jaw clenched. And that's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you understand that this was never personal. It was operational necessity. You terrorized me for 8 months. You tried to kill Garrett. You framed me for treason. Emily's voice stayed level through sheer force of will. That feels pretty personal. Cross was quiet for a moment. Fair point, but here's the thing. I'm calling to offer you a deal. I don't make deals with traitors. Even if it gets you information on the rest of the network, Sharp was middle management. Preston was one handler. There are 6 others still operating. Cross let that sink in. I can give you names, locations, operational details, everything the FBI needs to dismantle the entire apparatus. In exchange for what? Your silence. Tell them you don't know where I am. Let me disappear quietly. Emily almost laughed. You think I'd protect you? I think you're smart enough to weigh the value of one escaped operative against stopping 6 more operations like this one. Cross's voice was calculated. I'm offering you a chance to be a real hero, Emily. Save lives, prevent future attacks. All you have to do is nothing. Emily walked to her window and looked out at the parking lot. A car sat 3 spaces down that hadn't been there an hour ago. Dark sedan, glass-tinted windows. "Are you having me watched right now?" she asked quietly. Cross hesitated. "Insurance, in case you decide to make this difficult." "So much for nothing personal." "It's not a threat. It's a precaution. I need to know you'll stay quiet until I'm clear." Emily's mind was racing. Cross was desperate, which made him dangerous. But he'd also just admitted to surveillance, which meant he was still close enough to coordinate assets in real time. "Send me the information first," she said. "Then we'll talk about deals." "I'm not stupid, Emily. Neither am I. You want me to trust you? Prove you have something worth trading." Cross was silent for 10 seconds. Then, "Check your email. Encrypted file. Password is the date you pulled Webb out of that convoy in Kandahar. Month, day, year, no spaces." He hung up. Emily opened her laptop and refreshed her email. A new message from an anonymous account. Single attachment. She entered the password, November 17, 2020. The file opened. It was a directory. Names, locations, cover identities for operatives embedded in hospitals, military bases, and government facilities across the western United States. Her stomach dropped. This was bigger than anyone had realized. She grabbed the secure phone Morrison had given her and called. He answered on the second ring. "Carter, what's wrong?" "Cross just called me. He's still in the country. He sent me an intel dump, names and locations of other operatives in the network." Morrison swore. "Where is he?" "I don't know, but he has people watching my apartment. He wants me to stay quiet while he escapes." Emily pulled up the file. "Sir, this list, there are 16 names here. Medical facilities, supply depots, training centers. They've penetrated deep. Forward me everything. I'm dispatching teams to your location now." Emily sent the file, then grabbed her jacket. "The car outside my apartment, dark blue sedan, Colorado plates. Already tracking it. Stay inside until my people arrive." "How long?" 10 minutes. Can you hold that long?" Emily looked at the door. She'd barricaded it earlier without thinking about it. Old habits from overseas. "Yeah, I can hold." "Good. Stay on the line." Emily watched the sedan through the window. No movement. Whoever was inside was just observing. But if Cross had called from nearby, he might have more than one asset positioned. She moved away from the window and checked the back exit. Clear. The alley behind her building was dark but empty. "Morrison, I think Cross is close enough to run surveillance and coordinate multiple people. We're triangulating his call now. The trace showed it bounced through 3 relay points, but the origin was somewhere in Iron Ridge." Emily's heart rate kicked up. "He's still in town?" "Looks like it. He's probably waiting for a travel window. Fake documents, new identity. Those take time to arrange." A thought struck Emily. "What about the airport? Private terminals?" Morrison paused. "There's a charter service at Iron Ridge Municipal. Runs small planes for corporate clients. No TSA screening, minimal security. That's how he's planning to leave. Probably has a flight scheduled for early morning when traffic is minimal. I'll get people there now." Through the window, Emily saw headlights approaching. 2 black SUVs, military plates. They parked on either side of the sedan. Operators emerged, moving with tactical precision. The sedan's doors opened. 2 people stepped out with hands raised. Emily exhaled. "Your people are here." "Good. Stay put until they clear the building." 5 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. "Lieutenant Carter, it's Captain Hayes, security team. Colonel Morrison sent us." Emily checked the peephole, then opened the door. Captain Hayes was mid-30s, built like a linebacker with sharp eyes that scanned the apartment automatically. "You're secure, ma'am. The individuals in the sedan are in custody. They're not talking yet, but we'll get information." "What about Cross?" "Still hunting, but if he's planning to use the charter terminal, we'll have him by dawn." Hayes handed her a tactical radio. "This is encrypted. If Cross contacts you again, signal us immediately." Emily took the radio. "What do you want me to do?" "Stay here. Stay safe. Let us handle the rest." But Emily knew Cross. He wouldn't go quietly, and if he felt cornered, he'd escalate. "He's going to call again," she said. "He wants confirmation that I'm cooperating." Hayes nodded. "If he does, stall him. Keep him talking. We need time to position assets at the airport." The security team established a perimeter around her building while Emily waited. Morrison called back with updates. The FBI was raiding locations from Cross's list, teams were converging on the charter terminal, and Cross's brother in custody had confirmed the switch. At 3:15, Emily's phone rang again. Cross. She answered on speaker so Hayes could hear. What now? Have you made a decision? Cross asked. I'm considering it, but I need more assurance. How do I know you won't just disappear and leave me holding the bag? Because I gain nothing from that. Once I'm clear, the network is blown anyway. I'm offering you a head start to stop it before more people die. Where are you going? Cross laughed. Nice try. Are you stalling for a trace? I'm stalling because I don't trust you. You spent 8 months making my life hell. You tried to have me killed. Give me one reason I should help you. Because you're better than me. Because you actually care about saving lives instead of just using people. Cross's voice carried an edge of bitterness. I was recruited because I was ambitious and stupid. Sharp promised me money, influence, a career beyond what I could achieve legitimately. I took it because I thought I deserved more than what I had. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. You're right. It is. Cross sighed. Look, I know you're not going to help me. I knew that when I called. But I wanted you to hear the truth from me before you hear whatever story the FBI constructs. Emily felt Hayes tense beside her. What truth? She asked. That I destroyed your life because I was jealous of you. Because you had something I never did. Real skill, real courage, real integrity. And instead of respecting that, I tried to tear you down so I could feel bigger. Cross's voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Emily. For what that's worth. Emily didn't know what to say. The apology felt genuine, but it didn't erase the damage. It's worth knowing, she said carefully, but it doesn't change what you did. I know. That's why I'm leaving, because I can't fix this and I can't face what's coming. He paused. Goodbye, Emily. I hope you find peace. The line went dead. Hayes immediately radioed his team. Subject just ended contact. He's moving. All units converge on the airport. Emily sat in the silence that followed, processing the conversation. Cross had sounded defeated, resigned, which meant he either had an escape plan he was confident in or he had no plan at all. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Charter terminal, gate 3. He's boarding now. Emily showed Hayes. Who sent this? Hayes checked with his team. Unknown, could be Cross setting a trap, or someone else in the network trying to give him up. Or someone who wants this to end, Emily said quietly. Hayes made a decision. We're going. Stay here. No. Emily stood. I'm coming. Ma'am, that's not protocol. Cross called me specifically. He's fixated on me. If things go wrong, having me there might create an opportunity to de-escalate. Emily grabbed her jacket. And I deserve to see this through. Hayes studied her for 3 seconds, then nodded. Stay behind me at all times. They drove to Iron Ridge Municipal Airport in convoy formation. The charter terminal was on the far side of the field, away from commercial operations. Lights were on in the small building. Hayes's team established positions around the perimeter, while Emily stayed with him near the entrance. Through the windows, she could see movement inside. Morrison's voice came through the radio. We have visual confirmation. Cross is inside with 2 unidentified individuals. Small aircraft on the tarmac, engines running. Hayes keyed his mic. ROE? Capture if possible. Deadly force authorized if he presents a threat. Emily's pulse hammered. This was it, the end game. Hayes turned to her. Last chance to stay in the vehicle. I'm good. They moved toward the building. The doors were locked but not reinforced. Hayes's team breached them smoothly. Inside, the terminal was basic. A reception desk, a few chairs, a door leading to the tarmac. Cross stood near that door with a duffel bag over his shoulder. The 2 people with him were armed, but didn't draw weapons when the operators entered. Cross looked tired, defeated. He saw Emily and something flickered across his face. You came, he said. I came to watch you answer for what you did. Cross set down the duffel bag slowly. Fair enough. Hayes stepped forward. Dr. Damian Cross, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 20 other charges. Get on the ground. Now. Cross looked at the door to the tarmac. The plane was right there, 50 feet away. He could run, but he didn't. He knelt down and put his hands behind his head. I'm done running, he said quietly. Hayes's team moved in and secured him with practiced efficiency. The two armed individuals surrendered without resistance. Emily watched as they led Cross away in handcuffs. He looked at her one last time. I meant what I said. You're better than all of us. Then he was gone. Morrison arrived 20 minutes later as the sun started rising over the mountains. He found Emily sitting on the hood of one of the SUVs, watching the airport come to life. You okay? He asked. I don't know yet. Emily looked at him. Is it really over? The immediate threat is. Cross is in custody. Sharp's cooperating now that she knows Cross gave her up. Preston is facing court-martial. Morrison sat beside her. The rest of the network will take time to dismantle, but we have the roadmap now, thanks to you. I didn't do anything special, I just survived. You did more than survive. You fought back when most people would have broken. You connected pieces trained investigators missed. You stood your ground when killers came for you. Morrison's voice was firm. Don't minimize that. Emily watched the sky lighten. What happens now? Now you go home. Rest. Recover. Start that new job on Monday. Morrison stood. And eventually, when you're ready, you testify at the trials. Help us put these people away for good. I can do that. Morrison offered his hand. It's been an honor, Lieutenant. Emily shook it. Just Emily, sir. I think I'm done with ranks. Just Emily, then. He smiled slightly. Take care of yourself. He left. Hayes drove Emily back to her apartment. The sun was fully up now, painting Iron Ridge in gold and shadow. You did good work tonight, Hayes said. I just showed up. That's the hardest part, showing up when it matters. He pulled into her parking lot. Get some sleep, you've earned it. Emily went inside and collapsed on her bed without undressing. Sleep came fast and deep. She woke 12 hours later to her phone ringing, Margaret's number. Hello? Her voice was rough with sleep. Emily, I'm so sorry to bother you. I know you've been through hell, but we have a situation at the hospital and we could really use your input. Emily sat up. What kind of situation? Mass casualty incident? Bus accident on the highway? We're overwhelmed and the trauma team is struggling with triage. I know you're not supposed to start until Monday, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emily threw on clean scrubs and drove to the hospital. The ER was controlled chaos when she arrived. Patients on gurneys in the hallways, families crying, staff running between rooms. Margaret met her at the entrance. Thank you for coming. I know this is asking a lot. Where do you need me? Margaret pointed to the trauma bay. Triage. We have 6 critical patients and only 3 trauma rooms. Someone needs to make the calls on who gets immediate intervention. Emily walked into the ER and everything else fell away. This was what she knew. This was what she was built for. She moved through the chaos with absolute focus, assessing injuries, prioritizing care, directing resources. Her hands shook, but they worked. Her voice stayed calm while her mind calculated odds and outcomes. She saved 3 lives in the first hour by making hard calls about who could wait and who couldn't. Melissa and Jordan worked beside her, taking orders without question. The hostility was gone. So was the pity. They just worked as a team. 4 hours later, the worst was over. The last critical patient was stable and headed to surgery. Emily stepped back and let the day shift take over. She found Margaret in the hallway. That was extraordinary, Margaret said. You coordinated a mass casualty response better than physicians with 20 years' experience. Emily pulled off her gloves. It's what I was trained for. I know, but I'm grateful you were here to do it. Margaret hesitated. The staff want to thank you. There's going to be a department meeting tomorrow. They want to formally recognize what you've done, both today and over the past week. That's not necessary. Maybe not, but it's deserved. Margaret's expression softened. Emily, you've changed this place already, before you even officially started. That's powerful. Emily thought about Cross's words, about jealousy and insecurity, about tearing people down instead of building them up. I don't want recognition, she said. I just want to work in a place where people treat each other with respect, where competence matters more than ego. Then that's what we'll build, together. Emily nodded. Okay. She went home and showered, washing the blood and sweat away. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone different from the person who'd arrived in Iron Ridge 8 months ago, scarred, tired, but not broken. Never broken. The next day, the hospital held the department meeting. Emily stood in front of the entire ER staff while Margaret read a formal commendation recognizing her actions during the mass casualty incident. Then Melissa stood up. "I want to say something," she said, voice shaking slightly. "Emily, we failed you. We let Cross abuse you because it was easier than standing up to him. We laughed when we should have supported you, and when everything came out, we felt ashamed." Jordan stood next to her. "We don't expect forgiveness, but we want you to know that we're committed to doing better, to being better, because you showed us what real strength looks like." The rest of the staff stood in solidarity. Emily felt her throat tighten. She hadn't expected this, hadn't thought she needed it, but it helped. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know." The meeting ended and Emily went to her new office. It was small but functional. A desk, a computer, a window overlooking the parking lot. On the desk was a card signed by the entire staff. Simple message, "Welcome to the team." She sat down and opened her laptop. Started drafting training protocols, safety procedures, systems to prevent what happened to her from happening to anyone else. The work was hard, but satisfying. 3 weeks later, Emily testified before a federal grand jury. She walked them through everything: the harassment, the frame-up, the attack, the conspiracy. Cross and Sharp sat in the courtroom, both in orange jumpsuits, both avoiding her eyes. When Emily finished, the prosecutor thanked her. "Your testimony gives us everything we need," she said. "They're going away for a long time." Emily nodded. "Good." She walked out of the courthouse into bright Colorado sunshine. Webb was waiting outside. "How'd it go?" he asked. "It's done." "Good." He handed her an envelope. "This came for you, from Garrett." Emily opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo showed her in Kandahar, covered in dust and blood, surrounded by soldiers she'd saved. She didn't remember anyone taking it, but there she was, Valkyrie, in the middle of chaos, doing what she did best. The letter was short. "Emily, this photo has been on my desk for 4 years. It reminds me that the best people are the ones who show up when things are hardest. You did that in Kandahar. You did it in Iron Ridge. You'll keep doing it wherever you go. The world needs more people like you. Thank you for everything. David Garrett." Emily stared at the photo for a long time. Then she put it in her bag and walked to her car. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a room full of new nurses at Redwood Regional. She was leading their orientation, teaching them the things medical school didn't cover: how to trust your instincts, how to speak up when something feels wrong, how to survive in a system that doesn't always value you the way it should. "You're going to face doctors who ignore you," she told them. "Patients who dismiss you. Situations that feel impossible. But you don't have to accept being treated like you don't matter. You matter. Your voice matters. Your observations save lives." One young nurse raised her hand. "But what if nobody listens?" Emily thought about Cross, about Sharp, about 8 months of being made to feel invisible. Then you get louder. You document everything. You find allies. You don't give up. She met the nurse's eyes. Because the moment you accept being silenced is the moment you lose the ability to help people who need you. The class ended. The nurses filed out, energized and nervous. Melissa caught Emily in the hallway. "That was powerful." "Just telling the truth." "I know. That's what made it powerful." Melissa hesitated. "There's someone here to see you. Conference room." Emily walked to the conference room wondering who it could be. Morrison sat waiting along with 2 people she didn't recognize, a woman in her 40s with military bearing and a younger man in civilian clothes. "Emily," Morrison said, "thanks for making time. This is Colonel Andrea Martinez, Army Medical Command, and Dr. James Foster, civilian contractor for the Department of Defense." Emily shook their hands. "What's this about?" Martinez spoke first. "We've been following your case. Your testimony helped dismantle a significant espionage network, and your actions during the crisis demonstrated exceptional capability under pressure. I appreciate that, but I'm not interested in rejoining the military." "We're not asking you to," Foster said. "We're asking you to help us build something new. A training program for medical personnel operating in high-risk environments, combat zones, disaster areas, terrorist incidents. We need someone who understands both the medicine and the psychology of working under extreme stress. Emily looked at Morrison. You're behind this? I recommended you, but the decision is yours. Martinez slid a folder across the table. It's a civilian position, contract work, not active duty. You design curricula, lead training exercises, consult on protocol development. You'd be based in Colorado, but travel is needed. Emily opened the folder. The salary was triple what she made at the hospital. The work was meaningful. The opportunity was real. But it meant leaving Redwood Regional, leaving the team she'd just started building. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Foster said. We're not in a rush. Take the time you need. They left. Emily sat alone in the conference room, looking at the offer. A year ago, she would have jumped at it. A way to use her skills without the military structure. A chance to make a real difference. But things were different now. She had roots in Iron Ridge, friendships, a purpose that felt personal and immediate. She thought about the new nurses she was training, about Melissa and Jordan learning to be better, about Margaret working to change the culture, about all the small daily battles that mattered just as much as the big dramatic ones. She put the folder in her bag and went back to work. That evening, she met Webb for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the mountains. He'd become a friend over the months, someone who understood the space between soldier and civilian. Martinez made you an offer, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because I put your name forward too. After Morrison. After Garrett. Webb smiled. You're in demand, Valkyrie. Emily shook her head. I don't know if I want that life, the travel, the pressure, the constant reminder of things I'm trying to move past. Then don't take it. Stay here. Keep doing what you're doing. Webb's expression was serious. But don't stay because you're afraid. Stay because it's what you want. Emily looked out at the mountains turning gold in the sunset. What if I'm not sure what I want? Then take your time figuring it out. You've earned that. They finished dinner and Emily drove home. Her apartment was still small, but she'd made it more livable. Actual furniture, plants that were mostly alive, photos on the walls, including the one Garrett had sent. She sat on her couch and pulled out the offer letter again. Read it carefully. Then she made her decision. The next morning, she called Colonel Martinez. I appreciate the offer, Emily said, but I'm going to decline. Martinez took it well. Can I ask why? Because I'm building something here that matters to me. A team, a culture, a place where people like me don't have to fight so hard to be heard. Emily looked out her office window at the ER below. That's worth more than any contract. I understand, but the offer stays open. If you change your mind, call me. Emily hung up and went to find Margaret. I'm staying, she told her. Long term. If you'll have me. Margaret's face broke into a genuine smile. I was hoping you'd say that, because I've been thinking about expanding your role, Department Director of Emergency Services. You'd oversee not just training, but operations, policy, quality improvement. Emily blinked. That's a big job. And you're the right person for it. Margaret extended her hand. What do you say? Emily thought about Cross and Sharp and everyone who'd tried to make her small, about the nurses who'd ignored her and the system that had failed her, about how she'd survived all of it and come out stronger. She shook Margaret's hand. I say yes. 3 years later, Emily stood at a podium addressing the Colorado Emergency Medicine Conference. She'd been invited to speak about trauma response and medical leadership under crisis conditions. The ballroom was packed with physicians, nurses, paramedics, administrators, people who saved lives every day. I want to tell you a story, Emily began, about a nurse who spent 8 months being told she didn't matter, who was harassed, undermined, and nearly destroyed by people who should have been her colleagues, who was framed for crimes she didn't commit and almost killed by conspirators trying to cover their tracks. The room was silent. That nurse was me. And I'm standing here today not because I'm special or extraordinary, but because I refused to accept that being treated like garbage was normal, because I trusted my skills even when no one else did, because I survived long enough for the truth to come out. She paused, letting that sink in. But here's what I learned. Survival isn't enough. You can survive and stay broken. You can survive and stay angry, or you can survive and build something better. I chose the third option. I chose to create an environment where what happened to me couldn't happen to anyone else. Emily looked out at the audience, saw young nurses taking notes, saw seasoned physicians nodding. You all have power. The power to speak up when you see abuse. The power to support colleagues who are struggling. The power to build cultures of respect instead of hierarchy. Her voice strengthened. Don't waste that power, use it. Because the people you save aren't just patients. They're the nurses and medics and EMTs who need to know their voices matter. The applause started quietly, then built until the whole room was standing. Emily stepped away from the podium feeling lighter than she had in years. Afterward, a young nurse approached her. Early 20s, nervous energy. Ms. Carter, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been dealing with a doctor who treats me like I'm invisible. Your story, it helped me realize I don't have to accept that. Emily remembered being that young nurse, remembered the fear and uncertainty. You don't, she said firmly. Document everything, find allies, speak up, and if you need support, here's my card. I mean that. The nurse took the card with trembling hands. Thank you. Emily watched her walk away and felt something settle into place. This was why she'd stayed. This was what mattered. She drove back to Iron Ridge as the sun set, windows down, music playing. The mountains were beautiful in the fading light. Her phone rang, Garrett's number. They talked every few months, checking in, sharing war stories. Emily, how'd the conference go? Good. Really good, actually. I saw the video. You were brilliant. Garrett's voice was warm. I'm proud of you. Thanks, David. I mean it. You took something terrible and turned it into purpose. That's rare. Emily pulled into her driveway. She'd bought a small house 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, but hers. How are you doing? She asked. Recovered, back to work, training the next generation of operators. Garrett paused. And I make sure every one of them knows about Valkyrie, about what real courage looks like. Emily felt her throat tighten. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Because people need to know that heroes aren't always the ones charging into battle. Sometimes they're the ones who survive, rebuild, and refuse to let trauma define them. They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Emily went inside her house, fed her cat, a scraggly orange thing she'd rescued from the shelter, made dinner, watched the news. Normal life. Beautiful, ordinary, normal life. Later that night, she opened her laptop and checked her email. A message from one of her former students, now working at a hospital in Denver, thanking her for the training that had helped him handle a difficult trauma case. Another message from Morrison with updates on the final trials. Cross had been sentenced to 30 years. Sharp got 25. Preston was dishonorably discharged and facing life in military prison. Justice. Delayed, but delivered. Emily closed the laptop and walked to her bedroom. On the wall was the photo from Kandahar. Beside it, a framed challenge coin with Valkyrie engraved on it. Reminders of who she'd been, but they didn't define her anymore. She was more than her trauma, more than her scars, more than the things people had tried to make her believe about herself. She was Emily Carter, combat medic, trauma nurse, department director, survivor. And she was exactly where she needed to be. She turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow she'd go back to work. She'd train more nurses. She'd save more lives. She'd build something that mattered. Because that's what you did when you survived. You kept going. You kept fighting. You kept showing up. Not because it was easy, but because you refused to let the people who tried to break you win. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. The ones who survive aren't always the strongest or the loudest. Sometimes they're just the ones who refuse to disappear, who keep showing up, who turn pain into purpose and trauma into change. Emily Carter learned that power doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being relentless, from trusting yourself when no one else will, from building something better out of the wreckage they tried to bury you in. She was dismissed, discredited, and nearly destroyed. But she didn't break. She rebuilt. And in doing so, she proved that the quietest voices can shake the loudest systems if they refuse to be silenced.